Okay, good. Okay, good evening. The planning board meeting will come to order on April 18th. Is everything on the agenda going to be heard?
There is one item, the 1099 Salem Street. The applicant has asked to continue until the next meeting.
Okay, so with that exception, that's what we will do. And were we planning on going on the order of the agenda?
That is up to you.
Okay, well, let's do that because let's go back and are we going to do our, we had so much fun on the DPW articles, we decided to bring Jim back to torment him again.
Jim has graciously offered to come back and further explain this warrant article. So this is considered a non-zoning article. I provided in the packet just a little bit overview of the town charter and the planning board's responsibility on voting a recommendation on some articles that are not zoning but pertain to the environment or zoning or planning or subdivision. So as an overview, the CIP budget has some line items within it that do meet that criteria. And so historically, we'll kind of point out which line items those are. Jim is prepared to speak to them and answer some questions that were asked at the last meeting. So you should have in your packet non-zoning article, and within that is the CIP capital improvement plan. And the line items that we will discuss tonight, has everybody found that?
It's in the very back of the packet.
Yeah, sorry, because the rest of them are last on the agenda. So within that article, lines 5, 6, 7, 11, 12, and 13 will need your review. And you also have a list of street roadway improvement projects that you requested at the last meeting, and a calculation for the sidewalk fund that you also requested. Okay, Jim, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. For the record, Jim Stanford, Public Works Director. As Jean mentioned, I've provided an updated list of streets of road work that we've got planned for this year. There's also a map attached. I believe we can up on the screen. As you can see, it covers a range of periods within the fiscal year 2018. We're actually underway with the projects right now. We are paving a few streets this week, as a matter of fact. But I've included the list of all the roadways that we plan on doing from now until next July. There are, with two exceptions, High and Water Street, which is also another agenda or CIP item. We are postponing that. There's some ongoing work, gas company work, so that'll be delayed until later or at some point in 2018, calendar year 2018. There was some discussion last time about the pavement management system. We do hire a consultant to actually put together the roads program. In speaking with Public Works staff and the town manager, it's a very objective means of and efficient means of selecting the roadways with the limited budget. So that is a list that's put together on a 5-year period. We are going to be doing an update to that list very shortly. The pavement management system does track all of the changes, any inputs, any roadway improvements. So it has a full inventory of that as well as the sidewalks. I don't know if you have any specific questions for the roadways, or if you want me to, we can go right into the sidewalks as well. So we do have a list of sidewalk improvements that we'll be doing.
I think there was a question related to, do we have any bond funds held on these streets, and we do not.
So yeah, I mean, Hay Meadow, Tanglewood, Turtle Lane are all, I think, 70s and 80s subdivisions. Right. And the one I thought might have something might be Tanglewood.
It does not, and I did check that.
Okay.
So early in this report, it references Bear Hill, but Bear Hill is just, the project is crack seal. So we do actually have a bond held on Bear Hill for $25,000, but that is not like a level and repave type project.
Yeah. Okay. So any questions about the roadway improvements, about the sidewalks? They're all downtown, it looks like, sidewalk changes.
to say one thing, only because, and this is, I live on Buckingham Road, and they did that, you're gonna do the other side of Buckingham Road, I see on your plan, and they did this special thing that kind of lifts up so that, I don't know, for whatever reason, and it's crumbling in parts. So I just want you to be aware of that. Just-
Yeah, well,
The asphalt is like all over the place. So I don't know if it's, you go back to whoever's doing it or whatever. I'm just saying,
yep, no, we've been, actually, the last few weeks, that's what I've been doing, is going through and looking at the road projects that have been done and the sidewalk projects. Okay, yeah, we'll take a look at that as well. Yep,
I'm paying a lot of money for it, so.
it should be done right, I agree.
Yeah.
Tried to ask a little about this at the last meeting, but the roadway management system helps you take an objective look at the road conditions and applies that against a fixed and limited budget, prioritizes.
That's correct.
Does it also provide you with the ability to forecast what the backlog is, that the budget does not allow you to get to?
It does.
And does it allow you to also forecast the rate of change of the backlog? In other words, if we continue to go with the limited budget, based on the objective measurement, is the backlog, looking from where you are, is it going to grow? Or are we catching up to it and declining?
I haven't analyzed it completely. That's something we could ask the consultant. My experience is that once you get beyond 5 years, it's very difficult to predict. I mean, if you look at some of the factors, some of the variables, including the cost of asphalt, that has fluctuated over the last 15 years. It's held pretty steady as of late, but that's certainly something.
Well, let's say within those constraints, then, is the backlog growing over 5 years?
I haven't looked at that. We can certainly check with the consultant on that.
I just thought it was a very good question last time, because this is obviously a, rational approach to how do we match a limited budget against the needs, but it's like a snapshot for now, as opposed to, well, how are we doing? Are we gonna get where we want, or are we not treading water? Are we sinking?
And those are things that we can certainly speak to the consultant and look at that when we do the update. At this point, I just haven't gotten
Sure.
into it.
Well, what is it, 4 weeks now?
4 weeks now.
Four,
It has
so-
been, yeah.
Okay. Thank you, yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? I wanted to cycle back very quickly, and it's probably more a parenthetical comment than anything else, but I sit there and scratch my head with $475,000 to fix that intersection at High-End Water Street. I gotta tell you, I can't even in my remotest imagination figure out how we could spend that much money for something like that.
There was a project design. I actually have a copy of the design. Again, it's not something I've really gotten into, other than looking at the plans. The estimate has been, it's been out there for a little while now. It does include, I did look at what has been accomplished to date. We've done, actually, I had the list of what was accomplished.
Elm Street had all the granite curbing put in probably about 7 or 8 years ago. The concrete curbs were put in.
Yep.
The concrete walkways were put in on, when did this? About 4
Yeah,
or
I
5
mean,
years ago.
if you look at
The light
what
bulb.
it costs to build a roadway, the cost per square foot to build a roadway, to configure a single intersection to be that expensive is, I can't even begin to fathom it. It's like an order of magnitude off from what I thought it would be. I mean, that's the problem that I have with it.
Having designed and built a number of intersections, whenever you're retrofitting something, it's certainly a lot more expensive than if you're just building a new intersection, let's say. Curbing, drainage, those certainly add to the cost of it. And the curbing, in looking at the project, it does date back to 2006, and that's when the curbing and the sidewalks went in. Decorative lighting.
So does that 475 include the work that's already been done?
No, this is moving forward.
Okay,
And
so
it does include design work. It does include design work.
That's $1 million intersection.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I mean, it's almost shocking. I mean, I just don't get it. It doesn't logically make sense.
Again, these are the estimates that I have that were prepared. It's not something I've been able to look at. It's been in the CIP now for a number of years.
Okay. Well, just sort of, again, my opinion, probably more as a taxpayer, but, being on the planning board for a long time, you have an idea what things cost.
Yeah.
And just seems odd, so, but, any other questions before we move on? Okay, good. Thank you, Jim. Appreciate you coming in and
Thank you.
updating us.
Well, I think, I'm sorry, not a question, but just a statement. They gave us a new figure for the cost of sidewalks, so I think I don't know if we need to ratify updating our sidewalk in lieu of cost to what the actual cost is.
I don't think it's our cost, I think the DPW has
Right.
that cost, and when you do waive the sidewalk construction, they go to the DPW.
Oh, the
and pay that
DPW
fee.
generates that
Right.
figure. Okay,
Yeah.
so then,
That's
yeah,
their fee.
okay, so then
Yeah.
you'll update your figure for the developers.
It was $30. That would be the
Per linear.
recommendation, obviously. $30 a linear foot.
So whoever, I don't know your means of having that approved, whether that is your jurisdiction or not, but if that's your recommendation, then whatever approval process needs to be put in place needs to.
Yeah, that's certainly the cost that we've calculated. I believe the other cost was from 1991, so.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, but
Okay.
there's a few other line items on here for the, I think, John, you just covered the water and High Street, the ozone system, line 11, 12, and 13,
Where are we looking at?
in the capital budget.
The ozone system is for the water treatment plant. It's a method of pretreatment. It's really an environmentally sound way of doing it, killing the bacteria before you're actually doing the full treatment on it. So, again, I think that's the last major upgrade to the water treatment plant, and it's been in the works now for a number of years. We also, on item number 12, we also have the chemical tanks and the feed system. And again, those are the major chemicals that are for the major treatment, and those are original to the treatment facility, which I believe is about 25 years. So those are just at about the end of their lifespan as well. So those are the two other water CIP items that we have. And we also have some sewer CIP items as far as pump station upgrades. We have 22 pump stations, and just the sewer collection system as well, upgrades throughout the system.
On the ozone system, we still have to treat the water to the minimum state level with chlorine. Is there any movement on that to not have to do both treatment methods, that we could save money in the future, or is they still?
I believe that's always a moving target, every regulatory agency. So at this point, this is the recommended treatment that we
Okay, so
put.
they're not, then there's nothing in the movement.
I'm not aware.
To get rid of chlorine?
Yeah, I'm really not aware of.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
Do you know if, on the ones that are in the water and the sewer enterprise fund, do we take the whole cost of those projects and put them back into the rate structure, or just the net amount?
I don't believe, I don't know if there's been any updates to the rate structure. And again, that's something I just haven't gotten into as of yet. So I don't think I can answer that.
Okay. Just curious, okay. Okay.
So if you want further detail, I mean, I can speak to the town manager.
No, I don't think we
to see-
need any, it was more of a financial
Yeah,
question
but if
than
you wanted
anything
to
else. I
speak to
was
town
just-
manager and get back to you on any detail behind any of these line items, I'd be happy to do so.
That's, I mean, I gotta tell you, on that intersection, I wouldn't recommend favorable action on that unless we heard more of a story. I mean, speaking for myself.
Did you say you had the breakdown of the items?
I don't have the breakdown. I have
Melissa, can you-
some designs that were prepared
Okay.
moving forward. And again, this is, right now, it's just for future design in the construction of the remaining aspects, which are the streetscape. So we're not out to bid yet. And to your point of the cost, ultimately, once you go out to bid, then you know exactly what the cost is. We don't have final design, so that's another aspect. I think typically, in my own experience from years of engineering and design, generally, when you're at a CIP level, you have to account for all factors. As you go through the design process and scale that down, you definitely, the cost will be known. So at this point, again, I haven't gotten into the cost of this. I haven't gotten into the design or the preliminary design. I know that this has been a long-standing project. I know, as I mentioned, we're going to be looking at our roads program to coordinate the overlays and the other work. So there could be some cost savings there as well.
Got it. Okay. Okay. Good, great, thank you. Move on to the next one?
Okay. Do you want to vote on this tonight, or?
We can, but let's do it later.
Okay, so after that, we were going to transition into the public hearings.
Okay,
Thank you.
so 1099 is off. Country Club Circle?
You still have your A and R. for
Oh, okay.
375
Oh, I'm
Salem.
sorry.
Okay.
I missed that.
Yep, so we have, the applicant is asking to split the lot into 3 lots. Lot 1 has appropriate dimensional requirements. Lot 2 has 50 feet of frontage, and Lot 3, 75 feet of frontage. And they both received a frontage exception, access other than legal frontage and common driveway. So the plan has been shown to reflect just the 3 lots that we originally discussed.
So that little speck got
Is
taken out?
gone. Yes, it is. So the 20 feet of frontage that they were giving to the neighbor has now gone back into the existing lot for the 75, 20 feet of frontage for that lot.
Okay. And so with that change, they're completely conforming?
They're more conforming.
Conforming to our original waiver.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. So would somebody, unless there's no further questions, make a motion to direct the planner to sign off on Form A?
I'll make a motion to direct the planner to sign off on the Form A for 1975 Salem Street.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. So Country Club Circle.
So this is an application for a watershed special permit. The applicant proposes to construct a retaining wall, in-ground pool, spa, walkway, patio, fence, and associated grading and landscaping. We just received the updated stormwater information on Thursday, and all the information was submitted to Lisa Eagleston, but she has not gotten a chance to get back to us. Additionally, the applicant is in front of the ZBA for a new structure in the watershed, that being the pool. And at the last ZBA hearing, they actually have asked the applicant to move the pool out of the non-disturbance. So the only structure to be in the non-disturbance would be the retaining wall, where the pool would be pushed over a little bit further, as you can see in the plans. The applicant has gained access into the North Andover Country Club area in order to delineate that wetland, and that should soon be done within the next couple of weeks. So they still have a couple of hurdles in front of ZBA, but otherwise, we're just waiting for our stormwater review.
Do you have a view that shows the location relative to the lake?
I should.
And is this the new location of the pool? Based
That's
on-
the new
Okay.
location, correct?
Yes. Good evening, George Zamboris from Atlantic Engineering. Basically, what you're looking at right now, the pool shifted towards the house and northerly slightly, so that the entire pool structure, the pool itself is outside of the non-disturbance zone. It shifted about 10 feet one way and 15 feet northerly.
That's fine, you can go back, I just wanted to orient.
And as Rebecca indicated, we've supplied Lisa with the information for her latest comments. And when we did relocate the pool, we took Lisa's advice and went to what she was strongly suggesting anyways. We actually eliminated the rain gardens and we put infiltration trenches around the perimeter of the pool deck. And right now we've provided calculations to show that we're infiltrating about 1.5 times the volume of what the added impervious. So I feel confident that what we provided Lisa will satisfy her, hopefully. We've also made some minor changes to the wording changes to the maintenance plan to ensure that the methods of dechlorination that we had specified are for any time their pool has to be discharged, whether it's for maintenance during the year, before a large storm event, or towards the end of the year. And those were her two major comments. And as Rebecca indicated, we just received permission from the Country Club late Thursday to delineate the wetlands. Well, the wetland scientist will be going out next week to flag them. We'll be locating them and correcting if we have to, or I should say, updating the 2004 wetland delineation that's on the current plan right now. And we'll be giving that information to the Conservation Commission. That's it, just a quick update, really.
How are the dechlorination methods that you talked about, how are they sort of carried forward? So once you're no longer involved, or potentially even the current owner, how is that knowledge and procedure carried forward?
It's, well, it'll be part of the special permit regulations, whether it's in a you could require it to be a deeded document.
Similar to the fertilizer
Yeah.
document.
Is that reasonable?
We usually reference the O&M plan.
Okay.
I don't think we've ever put the whole O&M plan in.
As a deed restriction. but-
Yeah, the only problem is if best practices change, on
Right.
on a deed restriction, I don't know if we'd want it actually on the deed.
Right.
It is referenced in the
But
decision.
yeah, decision references in, which is, the decision's recorded.
And the decision is
Yeah.
recorded,
Yes.
correct?
I probably wouldn't put an O&M plan as a deed restriction.
So how, let's say
Yeah.
a new owner of the property, they're not likely to go back to
Their
a planning
title
board
exam will
decision.
show.
Yes.
It'll be recorded with the decision.
So their
No, but-
title.
Yeah, in the-
But I'm saying, would the new homeowner have access to the actual decision?
Yes.
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 The registry of deeds.
Yeah, the decision's recorded. Yeah.
I understand it's recorded.
Yeah.
Is the
They-
text of the decision going to be before the new
Yes.
homeowner without them going to the registry of
Yes.
deeds?
And we can add a condition to make it more prevalent in the decision that the maintenance of the pool must be upcut to the O&M plan that was approved by the board.
Yeah.
Is
Part of
that
it.
reasonable?
Yeah.
Is
Yeah,
your
that-
question that, in terms of, let's say, a new owner, how do they get access to the O&M plan and actually follow it? Is that?
No, it's more how do they have knowledge that there is a requirement?
Because
How
when they
that
get
is
a
managed.
mortgage, their bank is gonna,
I mean, I understand we bought and sold 14 houses.
Yeah.
It's just to get access among all that paperwork to the text of the planning board decision, that's my question. So this type of just highlighting it appeals to me. Just say, oh, that's something we may want to look into, just as a
Yeah,
queuing.
we can highlight it, yeah.
Unless you
Yeah.
think that,
Yeah, no,
So, you
I'd
know,
be
is
fine
it
with highlighting it,
cross-purpose?
but I don't think the O&M plan should be recorded for a lot of different reasons. Like, you wouldn't record an instruction manual.
right, I'm
Yeah.
not suggesting,
Yeah.
just the notion of queuing attention that there is something,
Yeah.
if that's
I
not
mean,
unreasonable.
frankly, that's maybe more along the lines of, if you really think about it, if we had at some time a log of all the pools in the watershed, that's the thing, you could have a targeted mailing, because really what you want, it's almost like, you know, like the warranty card or the instruction manual for the thing, make sure it's still
You know
there,
me,
so
I'm
you know.
always up for a mailing.
Well, actually, in this day and age, we should have an O&M
Yeah, or an
spreadsheet, a
online.
database that
Yeah.
automatically you can send out an email
Yeah,
automatically.
yeah,
and
that would
no
be
one
the way I think to
automated
do it,
100%, and that can, you know,
Yeah.
especially to the bigger projects, you know, but.
Yeah. So,
Well, I appreciate the conversation, and if there's a way to just cue attention that's not offensive, that might
Yeah.
be good.
We can reference it in the decision, and we'll keep on working it with the applicant in order to get the stormwater review consultants to confirm, as well as wait for the ZBA to define whether or not they're okay with the location as he put it today.
okay,
And by next meeting, we should be all
should
set.
be, I hope so.
Yeah. Let's get those comments in the delineation and we'll talk.
Chris.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving right along, Barnett College.
So just a brief update, the project consists of a modification to the existing permit to construct a one-story, 6,700 square feet expansion to the existing Sackowitz Campus Center. The second special permit proposes to upgrade the existing athletic fields to provide a modern synthetic turf. The applicant has submitted all of the documentation in terms of the stormwater review that we were talking about at the last meeting from Horsley Witten Group. The Sackowitz project has received an amended order of conditions from the town of Andover, and the athletic district is still under review, but the applicant expects it to close out at their next meeting in May. The North Andover Conservation Commission is reviewing the athletic district as a portion of the field is actually in their jurisdiction. And on April 12th, they stated they will be waiting until Andover peer review consultant finalizes their review before issuing a decision on the project. And at the last meeting, you had indicated you wanted to have a drafted decision, which are in your packet if you'd like to review.
So there's no real open issues on our side.
There is not.
Any members of the board have any questions on this one?
They sent stormwater, but
They
we
did send
we didn't get
stormwater.
it, correct?
We did get them, yes. Mhm.
I didn't see it in the package, am I missing it?
I didn't put it in the packet, but I
okay.
can bring it up.
Okay.
So were all the points resolved in the stormwater?
The stormwater, they've submitted all of the stormwater to us. They have signed off on everything. The Conservation Commission, North Andover Conservation Commission is waiting for the Andover Conservation Commission to close out before they issue their decision.
Okay.
But that was not,
Well, yeah, that's.
yeah, exactly. But we have received all of the stormwater, and they have closed out and accepted what they have presented.
And this is for, sorry, Jeff Karras with VHB. This is the Sackowitz expansion, the athletics piece of it on the storm. Are we keeping separate, or is it okay to join together? The athletics piece, we're just waiting on the final review with the Andover Conservation, but we hope to get that this week.
Good. Okay, good. But if there's no further questions, we have two separate public hearings open,
Yes.
right? So we probably should just close each public hearing, so I don't know if anybody would like to make a motion to that effect.
I'll make a motion to close the site plan review, decision modification for 315 Turnpike Street, Merrimack College.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. And let's close the other one. The first one you were doing was the Sackowitz Center, right? That was the first one.
They're both named the same. Yeah, they're both named exactly.
But the second one is the athletic one is, yeah. So you're gonna make a motion to close.
Oh, wait, okay, this one, okay, yeah, it is different. I'll make a motion to close the site plan review decision for 315 Turnpike Street, Merrimack College, and that one is for the athletic field is the new one, right?
Yeah, okay. So motion made and
Second.
second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Let us do the campus center one first, and then we'll do the other one.
Just a tiny item, but on number 8, should that be fire departments plural?
I'm sorry, what number?
8.
And what was the comment?
Should that be fire departments plural? Is that both Andover, North Andover, or?
Just our fire
North
department.
Andover, okay. Thanks.
I can specify that if you'd like.
No, it's fine.
Should be has then, right?
Then, yeah,
Yeah,
then
singular
Has
should be
no
has.
consent.
We want to find something so we can say it's amended, so. This number 10 and the conditions about the utilities, is there a condition someplace deeper into the thing that deals with that one?
There is not. I can move it down if you'd like.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the kind of thing, if there is a problem, we ought to probably put it where it can be fixed.
Yep, I'll move it down.
How did you come up with the bond amount?
That is what we had done for the prior project for North.
What?
The North Campus Development.
Yes.
The dorms?
Different
Yes.
people have different preferences. I think it does kind of get in there, you're not sure if it's part of the text or the footer.
the footer.
I will
It should
make
be
it a header. All right, it will be a header.
It gets confusing.
It does.
Should be a header.
So I also said I was going to be totally petty, and I asked Laura if I should do this, but you notice how...
You did.
I just was...
Okay, blame me. Okay. To get
Of course I was going to, no, I'm going to
Go
blame.
ahead.
Do you notice, like, 12 is out a little further than 13 through 17? I don't know if they're...
Okay, well then 22,
Yeah.
then 23 jumps out the indent in that.
Yeah, so, we're being very petty tonight.
Okay, we'll check the budget.
Just
Yeah.
because you're so good now, we're gonna get into
Yeah,
format.
that's right. We have to find some that
Fonts,
fonts,
format.
yeah, fonts. See, I wasn't gonna do it, but, Laura wanted to bring it up, so.
I did. It's on me. I do like the header
Yeah.
better than the footer.
It will be done.
Okay.
Let's look in the other directions.
I still wanna know what an Eddie-style hydrant is.
Actually, in regards to what you were stating earlier, for number 10, I have that the Department of Public Works had some concerns, but if you look down in the special conditions, that's number 13, 14, 15, 16.
Oh, okay,
So they are part of special conditions,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
that's right, okay.
If you really wanna get petty, I hate the paper clips with the little scratchy things on them. I like smooth paper.
You like smooth paper clips, okay. Good, I'll pay
I like a
attention to
staple.
that.
That's true.
Okay. No, I'd say, okay.
Peter's still reading.
Yeah.
Peter, you still reading this one, you want the next one?
I'm all set.
Okay, would somebody like to make a motion to approve the Sackowitz Campus Center site plan review application as amended? Modification, yeah.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So 4-0 vote, because Dave couldn't, and Aaron was new, so he didn't hear the whole thing, so, okay. On to the other one. So you approve the paperclip on this one?
Yeah.
Okay, good, much better.
Were we gonna say anything about the dome at this point, or no? Were we gonna say anything about the dome not going in unless we approve it, or is that a given?
Does need a modification,
That's a
so,
given.
Yeah, that's a given, yeah.
Yeah, there, no dome is included in
Okay.
that, yeah.
Same thing in number 7, the has versus have.
On it.
Yeah. Okay.
Also, would it be headers or footers?
Oh, yeah.
Headers only.
Headers only, oh, same
Always.
thing. Same thing with the indents.
On 16, should be Town of Andover and North Andover, Conservation Commission? Because we're waiting for Andover to approve it, so
Yes,
North
that's
Andover
correct.
can rubber stamp it pretty
Yep.
much. Okay.
I will add that.
For accounting purposes on number 19, is it, when we have multiple bonds from the same applicant for the same amount, how do you give a file number to it so releases don't get crossed or anything like that?
We submit it to the finance department as two separate bonds.
Okay.
And it gets two separate.
Two separate account
Yeah.
numbers, but, okay. I just wasn't sure if it would be easier to make this $15,001 or $14,900, just so they determine it's, you make.
Oh, no.
Okay, that's not a problem, okay.
So should 20 reference both North Andover and Andover the way 16 will, or is that not necessary?
20 might be a little different. There is a joint peer reviewer that's through the town of Andover Conservation, so the North Andover Conservation deferred to that peer review, so it's a joint review.
The same as they've done for the Sakowich Center. They have signed off on it. The Andover Conservation Commission has approved it. Therefore, that would be the same way. The peer review would go to the Andover Conservation, provide them with the peer review consultant, and they would approve it. And then our Conservation Commission, North Andover, would then take the advisement of the Andover Commission as well as their peer review consultant and then issue their own order separately. I can add something in regards to North Andover also approving the project.
Yeah. Okay. Would somebody like to make a motion on the site plan review for the athletic fields at Merrimack College?
I'll make a motion to approve the site plan review for 315 Turnpike Street, Merrimack College for the athletic fields. As
Okay.
amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay.
Thanks very much for your time.
Okay. 102 South Bradford Street, watershed special permit.
So this is a new public hearing. The application is for a watershed special
Guys want
permit.
to bring your, oh yeah, you got it.
We could have scored the easel.
Yeah, I know.
The application is for a watershed special permit. The applicant proposes to construct a 440 square foot addition and a 168 square foot screened-in porch off an existing home in the non-disturbance and non-discharge zone. The site plan calls for roof downspouts with green pipe cap to prevent leaves and other debris from entering the system. An overflow scrubber has been provided as part of the downspout, which will direct overflow onto the pervious lawn. The town stormwater consultant has reviewed the plan and has made some recommendations, which have then been updated accordingly on the plan. And the stormwater consultant has, in fact, signed off on this project being concluded, and we have drafted a decision if the board so deems to go in that direction.
Okay.
Good evening. For the record, my name is John Moore, and I work for the Moore and Cameron Group. We're here tonight representing Greg Penny on a watershed special permit application for his property located at 102 South Bradford Street. The plan that you see before you, South Bradford Street, is actually located on the left side of the plan, or the westerly side. Existing dwelling, lot was created back in 1955. An A&R plan was actually done back in 2003. Because of that, the setbacks associated with the watershed special permit are for a lot created after October of 1994. There are wetland resource areas that exist along the northerly side of the property. Those wetlands were flagged by Bill Manuel, and they were reviewed by the North Andover Conservation Office. So because of the A&R plan being created in 2003, you do have the 75-foot conservation zone, the 150-foot non-disturbance, and the 400-foot non-disturb zone. The proposed structure is about 1,600 feet from the lake, so it's really the setbacks from the wetlands that pull it into the watershed special permit. So on this plan, what you see, I didn't highlight the 75-foot non-disturb. I actually highlighted the 100-foot buffer so that you can see that we're actually outside the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission. What you see in red, I'll back up a little bit, is the existing house. So the proposed addition is going on the southerly side, or the side furthest from the wetlands that we can get it. So this green setback, that's the 100-foot. Here's the 150-foot non-disturb, and then the 400-foot non-discharge is well off the lot. So we are within a small portion, just barely in the non-disturb, and then in the non-discharge. One of the criteria for the non-disturb is you can't be any more than 25% of your gross floor area. We are less than 25%. for these proposed additions. And again, we're looking at about a 400 square foot addition, 440 square foot addition onto the house itself, and a proposed screen porch on the back. Just for a visual, when you're looking at it from the street, everything to the left you can see is the existing dwelling, front entrance garage. The proposed additions off to the right-hand side, single story, and then the actual screen porch is behind it, so you wouldn't see it from the front view. Erosion controls are proposed. Because of the way the existing roof lines are on the existing structure, not only are we infiltrating the roof runoff associated with the addition and the porch, but we're also collecting about 500 square feet of the existing roof. That's also going into that dry well structure. We did conduct a test pit out front. Soils are good soils, deep water table. As Rebecca had pointed out, the design has been reviewed by TEC. The only comment they had, one of the major comments, changes in the plan, was just the addition of some erosion control on the back side of the proposed addition, because this could eventually find its way back around, back out to the front. This property is on town sewer. And at this point, I'd like to open it up to any questions from the board.
I think the first question on the application, it shows there was already an addition done on the building. Was that garage added? Because that goes into the 25%.
That was part of the calculation.
The garage and this addition too? No.
I'd have to look into that.
So that permit was in May 18th, 1999, and it was to construct a second floor addition on an existing ranch in the watershed district, additionally to make right and legalize an in-ground pool.
All right, so that was
So
just,
was
sounds
a
like it's just for a second story.
Second floor addition.
Can you show the picture of the house again? So the ranch and then the two-car garage looks like it was an addition and they raised the roof level too.
The garage was always there.
The garage was always there? Okay.
They connected the house to the garage.
If you could come up
I'm
and
sorry.
speak and identify yourself. Sorry.
My name is Greg Penny, homeowner of 102 South Bradford. So back in '99, I believe, they connected the garage and they went up a second story.
Okay, so then we need the calculation on the gross floor area on that connection to the garage.
Okay.
And the second story.
Well, the second, no, it's floor area, not gross area, isn't it?
Gross story.
Gross floor area, yeah, okay, so we
So
need
it
that,
includes
yeah,
the second story, so.
to make sure we're under the 25%.
So the gross floor area is interior, first floor, second floor, or is it just footprint of the building?
What's our definition?
I don't know, I think it's probably the gross floor area inside,
Let me just double check.
but somebody should take a quick look at the bylaw.
It's-
Yeah, the way it's written is it says interior wall to interior wall, but it doesn't get into whether it's first floor, second floor.
It says on the application that was approved in 99 that the ground floor square footage was 1,633 and the total square foot was 2,689.
So what was the zoning though in 1990?
Yeah, so I'd have to check to see when the dimensional requirements were put in the bylaw.
Yeah,
I don't know if this pre-existed that 25 and 50% criteria.
yeah.
Yeah, the watershed was done before then,
The watershed, but that specific thing may have
Okay.
been
Watershed
modified
thing,
because I think
Okay.
it was changed once because people were doing exactly what you suggested, they were gaming it.
Coming back 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the percentages under section 6 and 7 were put in 2006.
So if that's, we're probably okay, but I think we should check that, because I think given watershed special permits are an area of our authority, and we should be exactly
Yep.
right. So we got it right to the T.
I agree.
Okay. Pete, do you have any questions?
Nope, good.
Yeah.
Good.
Good. Lynn?
Yeah, no, I'm good. The gross floor area was done in 1987, it's saying. And what he said was, shall be the floor area within the perimeter of the outside walls of the building without deduction for halls, stairways, closets, thickness of walls, columns, or other features.
So the floor area, so
Yeah.
first and second.
That's definite. I did have one question, just, I do know that, by recollection of that part of South Bradford Street, there's like a little, I don't know, you wouldn't call it a culvert, but there's a stream that flows out at the front, sort of down the hill there. You're doing everything into a dry well, right? So you're not gonna have anything that is going to go out to the street?
Correct.
Yeah.
And like I had mentioned before, we're also picking up like about 500 square feet of the existing roof, just because of the fact that right now, you've got a downspout right here, topography carries it out front. Obviously, as soon as we build this addition, it's not gonna carry it out front anymore, so we actually had to pick that up so that we could deal with that runoff as well. So we're actually getting a section of the roof back here that we're actually bringing into that dry well, so we sized the dry well to accommodate that as well.
Okay.
If they did an addition, why don't we have a watershed special permit from before?
The only watershed special permit I have is from 1999, and it was for the second story and to legalize the in-ground pool because they didn't permit it when they put it in.
Okay. So then there should be a modification, right? Or is it a new one?
Well, it's new and separate.
A separate addition of an addition, okay, so.
Yeah, I just think,
Okay.
I mean, I generally think this one's pretty clean, but I think you should go back and you should look at this, and then we'll take a final vote in 2 weeks, so. But I think we have, nobody else has any other questions.
No, just
do
to
we?
make sure they're under the 25%.
Yeah, okay. Okay, great, thank you.
Okay. And your next meeting is 2 weeks?
2 weeks.
May 2nd.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, we're on to the zoning articles.
Okay,
Correct.
so, yep, so, the public hearing was opened at the last planning board meeting for some of the zoning articles, with the exception of Article 12, which proposes to amend Section 8.13 to introduce a temporary moratorium on recreational marijuana establishments and retailers. That public hearing is on the agenda to actually open tonight. It's been noticed accordingly. But prior to that, we have 2 continued articles. So at the last meeting, you voted favorable action on Articles 13, 14, and 15. Deliberation began on Article 9, which proposes to again amend Section 8 to include a certain portion of land located at 1600 Osgood Street in the medical overlay district, medical marijuana overlay district, to further define the term medical marijuana facility and to further regulate the size and use of a facility. All of that was continued to tonight, as well as Article 11, which proposes to amend the zoning map itself to include the land described in Article 9. A revised map was submitted at the last hearing. The proponent revised the plan on 3/31/17 to accurately depict the site as reflected on plans recorded at the Registry of Deeds. So again, we have that map for review tonight. Michael Rosen indicated at the last meeting that we have had some discussion on the articles submitted, and that I had pointed to 2 technical items in the marijuana, the Article 9, Section 8 modification. The article itself, in the description, is referring to Section 8 as a medical marijuana treatment center when it is actually supplemental regulation. So again, it's a technical error in the description of the article itself. And also, I had concern related to the definition section, which is section 812.4. There was one paragraph in our existing bylaw definition section that was omitted from the article, and omitted because there was no strike-throughs or additions to that text. However, I just thought the context of the definition section had lost a little bit of the meaning by not including it for review. And again, the petitioner has indicated that he would add that section back in. So at tonight's hearing, Suzanne Egan, our town council, is here to help facilitate the discussion and answer any questions that the board may have.
What I'd like to do for the discussion tonight on this topic is to, I know the applicant is here, is to have, give the applicant a chance to speak initially. The board, I think, has a few questions that have been unanswered with the applicant. We'll let the public speak if the public wants to speak. We'd like to then have a bit of a discussion directly with council, where from our personal preferences, it certainly isn't public, but it will not be interactive. We'd like to go back and forth with the board and town council, and then maybe when that is done, if there is a pressing need for the public or the applicant to comment again, we'll do that. But I'd like to break the discussion into those pieces in order to facilitate an orderly discussion. So with that, I guess if the applicant has additional material to present, or fire away.
So my name's Tom Lee. I live at 96 Woodcrest Drive. We're here tonight to specifically discuss the language of warrant articles 9 and 11, both of which were submitted by me as citizen petitions back in March. Both articles are amendments to the town's existing medical marijuana overlay district, as defined in section 8.12 of the North Andover zoning bylaws. With these articles, the owners of 1600 Osgood Street are looking to expand the town's existing MMOD to allow cultivation of cannabis at 1600 Osgood Street, while ensuring that the facility shall not serve as a dispensary. Since submitting these petitions, we have come before this board on 3 occasions, and we have listened closely to your feedback. Based on your feedback and the feedback that we've received from Planning Director Gene Enright, Town Council Suzanne Egan, and Director of Community and Economic Development Erica Forey, we have made several amendments to the warrant articles that we would like to share with you tonight. We'd like to go through the amendments and make sure you approve of the warrant articles with the new language. It is important to us that, 1, you're comfortable with how the articles are written from a regulatory standpoint, and 2, that they're written in a way that voters are absolutely clear what they'll be voting on in May. I have printed copies of the warrant articles with the amendments. Do you have those? Would you like me to hand those out?
So the board has those.
These are the same ones?
Yep, so that, the yellow highlight there is what he's proposing as amendments to the...
Whose handwriting is this?
That's Michael Rosen.
Also, if you're interested, and it would help the discussion, we have an overview of the application process that we would have to go through DPH.
Oh, you didn't get yellow? I did. I must be special. You feel jealous? Yeah.
So go ahead.
It feels to me that for technical reasons, we should go through every change that's being made in this, so we know exactly what's being changed.
I agree.
So if you could start taking us through line by line of the changes, that would be a big help.
So Adam Barnowski, an attorney on behalf of the property owner. So if the board would please, we'd like to go through, it might be worthwhile to go through first the original changes that we're making, and then also to explain some of the handwritten changes, which are edits that have been made after the warrant articles were submitted to the town. So So the first one, we had discussed this briefly last time we were before the board. On 8.12.1, actually, you know what? Starting off, we should just go with this supplemental regulations number 1 on the highlighted document. So this was just a change that was made after discussions with town council, where we had mistakenly put medical marijuana treatment facilities, but the caption should just read supplemental regulations. So it's a non-substantive edit that we're making to it. And under 8.12.1, the change that we're requesting is to allow the properties located in the medical marijuana overlay district to be used as an RMD and/or any other use that's allowed in the underlying zoning district or overlay. Because as it's currently written, you can have a use that's you can either use it as a medical marijuana facility or something else that's allowed in the district. So what we're saying is, due to the size of this facility and due to the current tenants there and other uses that this facility could be in the future, we want to be able to have the opportunity to use the facility for either use.
Are we stopping or going?
No, you can ask.
Okay. On
what-
the underlying district, we have 2 districts there, so are you proposing that you'd have a right to use both even if one ends up being dissolved?
We'd be able to use any one that was in effect. I mean, if it was dissolved, we would not be able to use it.
Well, no, because this would be implemented before then, so you'd still have that right. Okay.
Any other questions on that specific change?
The term here in the definition is medical marijuana overlay district. Is there any magic to the term medical marijuana? Is there a definition of what medical marijuana means as opposed to another kind of marijuana, like as in recreational?
Well, currently, the only laws that govern marijuana in the state are specific to medical marijuana.
Yeah.
So it specifically identifies medical marijuana. It doesn't relate to any other type of marijuana.
But does that mean that if in a year or two there is a provision for recreational marijuana, that it excludes that?
No, it wouldn't exclude it. I mean, but it's impossible for us to say because.
Well, then you shouldn't use the word medical, because what you're doing is you're limiting the use here, when in fact you're saying there is no limited use.
No,
Right?
no. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Good evening, Michael Rosa. So the answer to the question is we're using a term that's already defined in your bylaw. You use the term medical marijuana overlay district in your bylaw, so we are using the term that you already use in your bylaw. Your bylaw specifies its meaning, and your bylaw specifies to the extent that a word is used capitalized and it's not defined in your bylaw, then it's the meaning that is defined under Massachusetts general laws. We are merely following words that are already in your bylaw.
But your intent is not to necessarily restrict it to medical marijuana, but would be at the point in time at which recreational marijuana is fully stipulated under the state law to include that as a use as well. I'm just trying to get at your intent, because we may want to label this stuff a little bit differently if that's the case.
We have no additional intent right now other than to sit back and watch how the law evolves.
Well, what happens if I'm not sure I understand what that means.
There is no law that allows anything other than medical marijuana right now. We're here to expand a defined term under your bylaw, which is a medical marijuana overlay district. We're here to add a property to a defined term in a defined district. If the law changes and changes the definition of that term, we'll explore it at that time and look at it and see what it means. You know, we can't draft bylaw provisions that would foresee what a state legislature or a federal government might do 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, 10 years from now. We're using defined terms that exist in your bylaw and under state law as they exist right now.
Okay.
So added to that, if recreational marijuana, that the laws are defined by the
Actually, I
state to
think in
qualify
answer,
that,
if I
then
had
you.
read ahead, I would have found out it's not intended to include any facility that cultivates or handles for education, research, or development pursuant to state or federal laws. Okay. Right?
But it'd be up to it'd be up to the town to modify that bylaw.
My understanding is, and you will see this in one of your future warrant articles, is that your town, based on advice given from the Attorney General, is adopting a moratorium for other marijuana, for recreational marijuana, so that the town has an opportunity to see what the state does for recreational marijuana bylaws. I'm sorry, for recreational marijuana laws, to then give the town the opportunity to adopt bylaws dealing with recreational marijuana. As of right now, there is no such thing as recreational marijuana under either state law or the local bylaw. The town already has a medical marijuana bylaw. You already have definitions in your bylaw. The zone, the district, is the property directly across the street from us. We're just looking to add our property into the district. That's all we're trying to do by the warrant article right now.
Okay, keep on going.
So moving on to 8.12.3. This edit expands the medical marijuana overlay district to include the property located at 1600 Osgood Street. And the change that we made on the highlighted handwritten change is just to include the updated draft, which was provided to the board.
And is the March 3rd, because I can't read on this, is the March 3rd the latest for the meets and bounds?
Yes.
Did they match that? Okay.
They're both dated, the original was dated March 3rd, but it's the draft release that is dated March 31st, and it'll say draft release on it.
Okay, I see, okay, that's your line up there, okay, got it.
So moving on to 8.12.4. So this includes a definition of medical marijuana facility. So it states that it means a facility used in the operation of RMD in accordance with the Marijuana Act, which is the state act. But it's not intended to include any facility that cultivates or handles cannabis for education, research, development pursuant to state or federal laws in conjunction with a state or federal agency, or for other lawful medical, hospital, educational, or research institute or entity, which uses are not intended to be limited to the bylaw. So basically what this means is that there's a specific exclusion if there's basically RMD that's done in conjunction with the state or federal government. So in that context, the marijuana laws, the state laws, the laws that would control the existing overlay are inapplicable. So we just wanted to make that clarification in the definition.
I don't understand that, can you, why does that need to be added?
There was some discussion as to what would happen if, for instance, you got a federal permit, because the DEA does issue permits to allow research and development using cannabis. So you would grow it not for sale, but you would grow it for research and development. For instance, there's a facility like this in Mississippi. If you go and you get a DEA permit that allows you to do it in conjunction with a research, either funded by the National Institute of Health or some other authorized state or federal agency, not for sale, but for research and development purposes. In our discussions with the town, it was indicated to us that this would not be growing and selling marijuana. This would fall under research and development uses. And because we want this to be a research and development center, we wanted to make clear that cannabis grown not for sale, but for research and development was not the topic covered by this bylaw.
Okay. And that's not covered by any other state and federal regulation already, or?
No, it is covered by federal, well, right now, the federal government is allowed to issue licenses. The
So
state,
you're just clarifying it?
we're
then?
just clarifying that if you went and got a DEA license to do testing and research on the property, that wouldn't be covered by this. That would be a research and development license, and it would be a use under research and development under the local bylaw.
What is the scale of the properties licensed by the DEA for research, like the one you referenced in Mississippi?
I can find out and get back to you, I'm not sure.
Is that on the scale of 1 million square feet?
Honestly, I'm not sure.
It would be great to know what the scale of that is.
Okay. Yeah.
So is this definition intended to exclude those types of facilities?
It is intended to exclude them from Article 8.12.
Well, what would be the reason for that?
Because they're not medical marijuana, so they wouldn't fall under state law for medical marijuana. It wouldn't be marijuana being sold under state law.
Okay. Okay, keep on going.
So 8.1263C, what we tried to do is we wanted to make the bylaws reflect the DPH's application process. I know last time we were before you, we provided a matrix showing what the state approval process is. Because as you know, if this bylaw if this warrant is passed, we still have to come before you for a special permit before this board. In addition, there's a very thorough vetting that's required at the state level where you have to go through several different procedures along the way. Now, part of the procedure for the special permit, in town, you were required under the bylaw as it's written now to include your registration as an RMD to get the special permit. But under state law, you can't get your permit until your site is up and running. They have to do they have to inspect the facility, they inspect your products, you have to be up and running. So we tried to make it more consistent to say that the applicant would have to provide during the special permit process the application of intent showing that it is going through the registration process with the state. Now, DPH has a link where you can follow every single filing that's done. So if the board is interested to see at any point in time where they're at, you can see what filings have been made with the state.
And 8.12.64, the only thing you're changing is 5 days, so I'm not sure what any of your discussion has to do with that point specifically.
So, right, it's the one above it. It's 0.63C. It currently says that you have to file a copy of the registration.
This is where it all blends, yeah.
I have a list of the application process if you want to see it.
I think they have that. Was that submitted at the last meeting?
Okay.
So they have that.
Mr. Boynton, to your point, 115,000 square feet in Mississippi. Okay? You're welcome.
Do any other, yes, on the skipping, why would we do it at registration like I think all the models for the bylaws for medical marijuana call for it being done at registration, not as application of intent. I don't think any town in Massachusetts has it at intent.
And you should have in your packet there should be a green
Right.
post-it next to the state guidelines issued in 2016 that refer to a town may require it to be the registration. They don't have to, but they can.
But I think we looked at all of them when we were doing the medical marijuana, and I think they were all at registration.
The problem with it at registration is in order to actually have your registration, your facility has to be built and inspected. If you can't build your facility until you have your special permit in hand, then you can't physically have a registration. So therefore, the bylaw has a catch-22 in it. And as we're reading the bylaw, we noticed that catch-22. Registration is only issued if you look at the pages listing the procedures you have to go through to get the DPH registration. And we went through this in fine detail to make sure that we had a full understanding of every single step you had to go through so we could explain it to this board.
Okay.
The last step is an inspection. Then you have your inspection, then you can get your registration.
Well-
So there would be no way
Okay.
possible to have a registration.
But to your question specifically is, I think we need to do some more due diligence
Oh,
here.
we'll ask that.
And this is something we should talk to council, but this is something, this is one of the pitfalls of taking probably the most complicated thing I've seen on this board in over 20 years and trying to do it in the space of a few weeks as opposed to a year like we normally do for a large thing like this. Because, Jean, one of the things we should do is, we ought to go back to the state or to the planning authority or something and find out what really the best practices here, because if indeed this thing truly is a catch-22 and you get in an endless circle, fair enough, but I'd like to affirmatively figure that out ourselves and work from there, because in fact what it does is it's not consistent with the model bylaws and what we've seen elsewhere, and what it does is it creates a big advantage for an applicant here. This is different than I think we have in a lot of other areas of our bylaws, so.
So you have section 8 that, as it exists today as well, and if you look at the other requirements for filing a site plan review application, there's several of them that also require DPH's findings that take place after the application of intent.
Yeah.
So there's several other items in addition to this that aren't called off to be changed. So I think there'd still be the same problem at the application time.
On those other items, we have to provide you copies of things that we would be submitting to DPH, but we wouldn't have to provide you things, I don't believe, that have been, oh, actually, no, you know
Yeah,
what?
there's several of them.
Policies
So
and
if you-
procedures, yep.
Yep, so if you look at, again, you guys have the existing section 812. So a description of the security measures, including employee security policies approved by DPH for the RMD.
Those actually can be approved before registration as part of the citing process.
For registration, but not at application of intent time. So,
Can I see our schedule?
so it goes on, a copy of emergency procedures approved by DPH, a copy of policies and procedures for patient and personal care, home delivery approved by DPH.
It's here.
So there's several of them, all the Roman numerals.
So there's, if you look at the, we gave you a 5-part application overview to the DPH.
Yep.
And I believe that all of those other items can be approved in stage 2, which is the management and operations profile.
Which one are you referring to?
He's referring to the
Policies
one.
and procedures,
okay.
yeah, exactly. So if you look at section 2, that's when you have to summarize your security operations, your operating procedures, your procedures for confidentiality, your personnel policies, your record keeping, your procedures for dispensing. So all of those things can be submitted and approved as part of stage 2, which I believe we can do prior to filing for a special permit. It's the registration, the final registration, which is at stage 5, which we couldn't do because we couldn't be open and running. But everything else that you mentioned has to have DPH approval, falls in stage 2. So it's our belief that we would get through stage 2 and then come back in with stage 3 at our citing profile stage. So we did look at everything in there. And again, we believe everything else would tie into stage 2. That's specifically one of the reasons we broke this down and we prepared the chart and we brought it, is so that everyone could see what we were thinking as far as timing wise. Thank you.
Now, this is also a question that I want to ask at town council, because the order at which things go here is not the order that this change is created. It's a different order. Okay, so,
That was 8, number 3.
yeah, so this is 8-12-6, now we go to 8-12-6-4.
This change, you'll see the addition of the language within 5 days receipt. So the edit creates a requirement for the special permit granting authority to refer applications to the applicable town department within 5 days receipt. We just wanted to clarify the timeline for receipt, so that both.
So are there any of the other, did you go back and look at our special permit bylaw to see if that's required for any other type of special permit?
Yes, we did, and actually, that's the basis for putting the language in here. This is the same issue that we ran into with the solar project, where the application never got submitted by the board to the other departments in town, and as a result, it caused a delay in the middle of the process. So we added this
Well, we
language.
would respectfully disagree with that. I mean, now what you're doing is I think you're getting out of, you didn't answer the question I asked. The question I asked, is there a...
You asked if we looked at the bylaw, John, and I answered you, and I said, yes, we looked at the bylaw.
Yeah,
And I
did the
explained-
bylaw say 5 days anywhere in our existing bylaw?
No, it doesn't. It
And
has
so
no
it
time
doesn't.
frame.
So it does, so you've created a special time frame for this type of special permit that's different from the language that exists for any other special type of
I'd
special.
recommend the change for any special permit that requires
but that
circulation of
is-
board, John. If I could finish my thought, I would appreciate it. Thank you. The only difference
Well,
is
I'd like you to
that-
answer my question, okay?
Tell me when you're ready for me to answer, John.
Is the same, is it 5 days in any other section of the bylaw?
It is not 5 days in any other section of the
Okay.
bylaw.
That's the question
If I
I
could
asked.
explain now the answer, we are only putting it in here because this is the only bylaw we're providing revisions for tonight. If we were revising the entire bylaw, we would suggest it in every section that requires, the language says the SPGA shall refer copies of the application to the different departments. Because it doesn't have a timing element to it, wherever that requirement exists in the bylaw, there should be a timing element.
But there's
But are you
already,
saying 5 business days or 5 days?
5 business days is fine. We
Well, I'm
just put
asking.
something.
No, but,
We put in 5
think-
days.
didn't
We
so
just,
if you submitted it on a long weekend, on a Friday afternoon at 3 o'clock, then we're
duly,
giving the town
One of the
1 day
reasons-
to get it out.
one of the reasons we're here, and we've been asking for comments in the 3 meetings we've been here, we're happy to change it to 5 business days, we're happy to change it to 10 business days. We picked a starting point and we put it in the draft. But we're very happy to put in a different number of days. The point was just to put some tracking mechanism so that it would get done in a timely manner.
well,
That's all.
Can I
but
just-
we have to give, the departments have to give approval within 30 days regardless of when it's submitted, so us, when.
There's
No,
already
but then
a
30
bucket
days of
there.
their receipt, and again, this was the issue we debated on the
Within-
last project.
Okay, within
30
35
days.
days, a referral of the application, not the
Ref-
submittal of the application.
No,
to the
referral of the
department.
application, meaning delivery of the application to the other parties.
No,
Okay,
Okay.
but that's not what we discussed on our last project. The debate in the last project was something didn't get submitted to the departments. We were at a hearing.
I
and
don't
we-
think it's a
if
good
I could-
idea to talk about the last project, though. Why don't we just talk about this one here?
We're
We
trying.
just don't, I don't think it's a good idea to make changes in the zoning law in terms of forcing a specific procedure when it exists only for the benefit of one type of application and not for anything else. So you answered the question of why you did it, and you also answered the question, in fact, there is no time clock in any other type of special permit.
Again, this creates the same catch-22.
It doesn't create a catch-22.
Under the special permit bylaws, there's deadlines to make determinations and decisions. If there's no deadline to deliver it to the other boards, and they have 30 days to review it once it's delivered to them, then you run a catch-22
That's
that
not
if
the
it's...
way it's written.
So,
And
just
there
if I
are
could,
limits on it.
Laura, do you
Yeah.
read it that way? Or actually, why don't we just have, sorry, town council.
We'll have town council
Because
take a look
I don't
at
read
it.
I read
Okay.
that they have 35 days from the application, but I see what you're saying, but 35 days from when they get it.
Right.
But I'm reading it differently to you, so we'll get an opinion on that
so
one.
John, my perspective here, if I could just offer it, is that this is creating a new standard that does not exist anywhere else in the current bylaws, and that's a concern.
Yeah.
Why and from where and for what, and it just doesn't seem like the right vehicle to be creating a new standard that does not exist.
Yeah, that's, yeah, fair enough, yeah. Okay, we understand why you did that. Now, how about the next one? 812.6.6B.
Yes, so last time we were before this board, the concern was that there would be some way in which the property at 1600 Osgood would dispense marijuana. And we've said that, you know, we're trying to figure out any way in which we can create language that would pass muster at the AG's office to allow a restriction on the property. So I think the imperative document to look is, if you look at the handwritten document, and we can walk through it and kind of go through the different incarnations of it, but now it says that no medical marijuana facility which sells or dispenses marijuana to the public directly from its facility shall have gross floor area of less than 2,500 square feet or in excess of 20,000 square feet. That's left unchanged from our last draft. And it says any medical marijuana facility or facilities, if more than one exists on a property, which are in excess of 20,000 square feet cumulatively, shall not sell or dispense directly to the public from any location on such property. And then finally, that no medical marijuana facility on all or a portion of map 34 parcel 17 shall sell or dispense marijuana directly to the public from any location on such property. So we felt that this language made it very clear that you cannot sell on this property, and also if there was any concerns about subdividing property, that the map parcel is very clear. We can't subdivide this property due to the fact the facility is on it. We don't have frontage, but we did try to craft the language in the most specific way we could to ease the board's concern. Certainly, we're here.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Going back to what you said earlier, that if it was a research facility and you carve out those parts, you know, that whatever, that federal DEA thing, and you
Yes.
carve them out, does this affect that at all?
That is not applicable to it. If there was some sort of research related to a federal grant, that would not be for dispensing marijuana.
Right, but what I'm saying is, are you changing the numbers by carving out certain parts to be research, right? So here, or is it gonna be a whole blatant prohibition on the whole property, that there will never be
Right.
a sale from them?
The way that it's written, right? Yeah. The way that it's written is that this portion, 34 parcel 17, no medical marijuana shall sell or dispense marijuana directly to the public on this property. So no matter how you carve it up, the way the language is written now, there will be no dispensing, and we feel like this is limiting enough to prohibit the sale or dispensing of marijuana on this property. However, it doesn't affect the rest of the overlay district. So, you know, because generally, a blanket prohibition against anything under the medical regs has difficulty passing muster at the agency.
But you're saying so across the street they could sell?
Well, anywhere within the medical marijuana overlay district, right.
So, sorry.
No.
So nothing would prevent your client or whoever from buying property across the street and opening a facility?
Well, across the street's
A
not in the-
dispensary.
Well,
It's not in the
not for
district.
medical.
No, in the overlay district, there's still land over in the overlay district.
Not across the street on Holt Road.
On Hope Road.
Okay, yeah.
Well,
Across
they're
would be a
saying
police
across
station.
the street, so I'm
Okay,
saying
they say,
across.
okay, yeah.
I'm using
Which
the same lingo.
wouldn't change what's there now.
We did not do anything
Right.
in our warrant articles to impact anybody else's properties or anybody else's rights. We have not in any way addressed any other parcels. We have only addressed our property and our parcel.
Well,
Well, but you could
am
buy
I
it.
incorrect that, you just said nothing to interfere with anybody else's rights, but if this goes forward, people on the other side of 125 would not be able to use their property for any purpose involving children because you'd be within 500 feet,
That's
right?
correct. They
So
wouldn't be
that-
able to
this-
open a daycare.
So this
Yeah.
proposal,
Would impact.
this proposal does impact the rights of adjoining property owners. It
Yes.
limits the rights
I stand corrected.
of
You are
adjoining
correct.
property owners.
Yes.
Correct.
So I just have a clarification question, and I suspected there's a good answer to this, but this is a blanket prohibition, no sale of medical marijuana from this facility.
That's correct.
What about recreational marijuana? Could that be sold?
No, because there's no law in books currently.
No, I totally understand that there's no law currently, but if the law were to change, there's no prohibition here against selling recreational marijuana.
I mean, so actually, you have a moratorium question that's one of the next items on your warrant article, and that is going to prohibit any recreational use in the town until the town adopts bylaws. So you're addressing that by moratorium so that you'll be able to adopt bylaws that will be able to effectively take care of that.
It just struck me as very, the intent you're describing is to be a blanket moratorium, but since we can't predict the future that you've pointed out, struck me that the precision of the term here is really not a blanket prohibition.
Again, our provisions relate to the medical marijuana bylaw that you have.
Yep.
And we made revisions to the medical marijuana bylaw that you have.
It just, that it seems like one of the conclusions that could be drawn is there will be no sales, but that's not the case here. This would say no sales of medical marijuana.
The only thing in your bylaw is medical marijuana.
I understand that,
Right.
I understand that. Yeah, maybe it's just a case of communication and certainly
Right.
perception.
Right, I guess the one thing I would mention is the old bylaw read, no medical marijuana facility shall have a gross floor area of less than 2,500 square feet or in excess of 20,000 square feet, so it clearly had a limitation. It's very interesting the way that restriction was removed, not by saying that a facility could be of any size, but it could say, no facility which sells or dispenses directly shall have one of less than 20, as opposed to saying, if you don't dispense, you will be able to have something more than 20,000. If somebody reading this very carefully would still think there's a 20,000 limitation.
Right.
So, but again, we know what what the intent is here, so we don't have to, but it is an interesting way it was drafted. So. Now, beyond that, there looks to be a bunch of strikeouts and inserts, but I can't quite figure out what they're intended to do.
So we had discussed all of the strike-throughs and inclusions proposed. The only one we didn't discuss was on 8.124. We did not include the original text, which I believe town council thought that we might be seeking to remove that. Had we done that, there would have been a strike-through for it. So what we're requesting is that we insert the language that followed our additional language and put it back in that bylaw, just to show that there's no changes to that portion. So we've included that in the pamphlet. If you look through, it's on page 3 where you see the insert 3. So that's the paragraph where there's no changes. It's a non-substantive change.
Okay. So any other questions, comments from the board? Any other questions?
Well, I mean, I have,
Well, what I was thinking is, what I'd like to do is spend a little bit of time talking, not so much the language of the thing, but some of the substantive things about what it's going to do, what it's not going to do. And Pete, you,
Before we get to that, should we ask the public at some point? Or not? Until we get to the meeting?
let us,
Okay.
yeah, get our questions. And so, Pete, do you want to go first with some?
no, that's right. Go ahead.
What's that? I actually did have a question. What Can you talk a little bit about it's probably a question of capacity or carrying load, a square foot or 100,000 square feet of cultivating space, how much can it produce?
My name's Tom Regan. I'm consulting with the group. We have a facility in Colorado, 25,000 square feet. We produce between 300 and 500 pounds a month. So about 5.
So how many roughly, how many sort of, if you can convert it to grams per square foot, and, can you produce in a year? Because my understanding is that you can produce multiple harvests a year.
Yeah, you can do about 4 to, depending on how efficient you are, you can do between 4 and 6 harvests a year.
Okay. So what I'm trying to get at is if you had,
Yeah, so do the math. Let's say 400 pounds per 25,000 square feet of grow space times 4 to get to 100, or what's the ultimate size? 100 and, yeah.
So it's, I think if you took 500, isn't that 20,000 pounds or 10 tons of marijuana per month in a million square foot?
No.
well, that's what I'm
no,
trying,
no,
I'm
in
a
a
little bit
million
trying to get
square
at.
foot.
Yeah, in a million, yeah, that's what I wanted, that's the question I'm asking.
Is,
The plan,
my understanding is typically it's in, it's, the output's typically measured in grams or.
no, in a production facility, you'll measure it in pounds, and at the retail level, you'll measure it in grams.
Okay.
So think of like a pharmaceutical, you measure things in milligrams. In this case, in a dispensary retail environment, you'll do grams.
Okay.
But there's
What
about
is it?
454 grams to a pound.
What is it?
Well, I know that, but can you give,
I have no idea. What is it?
yeah, I'm just trying to get some idea of what the ultimate capacity this will be and, compare that to what is the total demand in the state.
Yes.
Well, based on the numbers you just gave us for your 25,000 square foot facility in Colorado, if you use the 500 pounds per month for 25,000 square feet,
Right.
for a million square foot facility, that comes out to 20,000 pounds or 10 tons per month.
If every single square foot in that million is used to
I'm
grow.
just using the same scale.
Yeah.
So it's 10 tons of marijuana per month in a million square foot facility, based on the experience in Colorado.
So Massachusetts market is predicting between 8 and 10 million square feet of grow space will be needed to meet the needs of medical marijuana in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So if we had a million square foot space, and let's say we were using 50% of that for grow and 50% for research and development, we would be meeting 1/20th of the space
Well,
requirements projected
And are you
for the
projecting
Commonwealth.
that you're going to use 50% of the facility for research and development?
We're not sure yet. We've got some
So I'm
letters of
just
intent.
asking because you're
I-
using that figure.
I guess I would ask a slightly different question, because what you've done is you've taken out the numerator and denominator. Is I'm asking the question of what is the likely Massachusetts demand for both medical and recreational marijuana, and then what I'm trying to figure out is how much, again, what's the reasonable amount per square foot? I mean, that, I'm asking a slightly different question.
Okay, so to the question that you first asked, we're basing it on a need of 8 to 10 million square feet.
That's not the question I asked. I'm asking a different question. I'm asking the question is, I want to see that number disaggregated. I want to understand what the total demand number is and what the productive capacity is. I want to see the assumptions that go in underneath it.
We'll have to calculate some of those and get back to you then.
Okay.
What is a medical marijuana dose? You're talking pounds of square footage, gross. How many grams? I have no idea.
How many grams of,
What's a dose? I mean, maybe
Well,
Dr. Goldstein can
yeah,
answer that.
typical-
I have
yeah.
no idea.
a typical dose for medical patients end up, in Colorado, the experience in Colorado is different. A medical patient has a higher dosage typically than a recreational. In Colorado, they limit it by state law how much a recreational patient or customer can buy. It's about, I think it's maxed out at 2 ounces of flour.
A day, yeah.
And on the medical side, it's a caregiver model, so doctors prescribe based on plans. But to answer your question, a typical dose, a low dose would be 10 milligrams, concentrated form, and some people need 100 milligrams per dose.
Per day, per,
It depends on their condition, it's a medical.
what's a high-low?
I don't.
Any idea?
Yeah, I mean,
It's unique to the patient.
actually, I've seen a little bit of research where they disaggregate the population of people and they try to figure out the demand by
Well, that's what I was
usage
wondering.
tape.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
gonna say, if you, how many
Yeah.
people, you know.
That's
what's the
where I was
dosing?
trying to
Yeah,
get what
okay.
the total amount
Yeah.
was.
It's a medical situation on the medical side. It depends on what the person's
Yeah.
prescription is and what their,
Yeah, well, usually like, you know,
yeah, like
certain
a
medications, you know the range.
yeah, high-strength Tylenol, I think
Yeah.
it's 350 or 325 milligrams. It's
So- Another question we have is, what's the largest size cultivation facility in Colorado?
The largest indoor that I know of is 200,000 square feet, and I think there's couple outdoor facilities that are over 1 million.
Okay.
Down in Pueblo. And you can, if you Google it, you can see it. And by the way, I live in town. I own a home in town. I've lived here for 23 years. I'm not from Colorado. I failed to say that last time I was here. So my kids are all in public schools and here why.
Okay. Pete? Okay. So it's probably time to ask the public. I don't know if anybody's here from the public that wants to talk about this topic. Okay, if not, town council, you're up.
Good evening, Suzanne Egan, Town Council, and I am here. We can do a detailed analysis of what was just presented, if that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Okay. Councilman Michael.
You guys, yeah.
Sure. So I think it might be helpful to look at this in 2 ways. One is, this is a proposal to extend the medical marijuana district. And so that's one level to look at this. You have an existing medical marijuana overlay district. And that they're seeking to have that extended to include their parcel. And that would be, in one way, is just completely taking all those regulations that have already been approved by the town through its bylaw and extending it to another parcel. And that's one issue to look at. And so that's one determination for the board to make, whether you would be, do a favorable or an unfavorable recommendation with regard to just that aspect of it. And then there's a second aspect of this proposal, and that is the substantive and procedural changes to the medical marijuana overlay district that affects the entire district. So it affects this parcel that you want to extend it to, and also the existing parcel. So there's those 2 levels, and one I think is kind of the initial sort of, do we want to extend the medical marijuana overlay district, is sort of a basic land use policy question that doesn't get to any legal issues, and that's just for the board to make that determination as to land use. Now, with regard to the second issue as to the changes that are being made that turn into substantive changes to the medical overlay district, we can walk through those particularly and see what the impact is, what the legal ramifications are, and then where they just purely raise policy questions. That is for the board to make that determination in terms of recommendation to the town meeting. So the first issue that was raised was just the basic technical, the fact that the bylaw was misnamed, and it shouldn't have been medical marijuana treatment facilities, but it's just supplemental regulations. So that's a technical aspect, not a challenging one, that you would think that would be acted upon. And so the second one is in 8.12.1. What the proponent went through before is that change between the overlay district, the uses allowed within the overlay district, whether you're going to allow the overlay district uses, the underlying district uses, and then in each of the parcels, they have another overlay district, right? So in the proponent's parcel on Osgood Street, there's a smart growth, and then there's the industrial underlying district. In the other Holt Road parcel, there's I believe that's industrial also, industrial, and then there's the adult use entertainment district.
Right, which would now give that part the right to use adult entertainment and medical marijuana possibly on the same site, correct?
Exactly, right. And so that's an issue that's to be raised here. And then, that's sort of the policy issue, right? So the legal technical issue with regard to that is in the proposed language, there's an inconsistency in 8.12.1, whereas it talks about an either or in some aspects of it, and then it just goes to talking about the underlying district. So you want that internal consistency within a bylaw that's being proposed, and this, as proposed, that change in language does not have that internal consistency.
Does everybody see that piece of it?
Do you understand what I'm saying?
After the insertion of inclusive of any other overlay district, the sentence continues, in which case the requirements of the underlying district shall apply.
And so that would...
Right, because that was added, so
Right.
that doesn't, carry
Right.
through.
So the way to change the inconsistency would be just to change that language from underlying to applicable zoning district, and that would bring it consistent internally, but then you also have that policy decision to make.
But I believe when we passed it was the reason we didn't put in other overlay. We specifically left off overlay because of the areas that I just raised on that particular area.
So that's the decision. And then if we continue on, then 8.12.3, which is the map that extends the boundaries of the overlay district, that's also technical. What was initially proposed is the plan and map shown did not reflect the plans as recorded in the Registry of Deeds. And so through this process of having this reviewed sort of by town staff, the proponent has prepared and submitted the draft as of 3/31/17, which accurately reflects the plans as recorded with the Registry of Deeds. And then the next issue is the 8.12.4, which is the definitions, and there was some discussion about this before. So if you go to the second part of the sentence, I'll read it to you. It says, medical marijuana facility means a facility used for the operation of an RMD in accordance with the Marijuana Act, comma, but is not intended to, and then it continues on as to what it's not intended to be. So in order to fully understand what this sentence means, I've taken a while, and I'm still not sure that I can fully understand it because there's a lot of ors and ands, and you can put all of the different words together in a sentence to see, okay, is this what they're talking about, or is this what they're talking about? So it's not, I wouldn't say that this is clear for both applicants and for a board to consider, and that if an applicant is coming before the town and requesting a particular use, typically what happens is you go to the building inspector and you say, what type of relief do I need? Do I need to apply for a special permit? Can I have my building permit by right? In something like this, if the applicant comes in and says, well, we're going to do an R&D on marijuana, but it doesn't fall within the medical marijuana overlay district because it's a different use, that could be a discussion at that point, to look at the laws in effect at the time and to make a determination on the basis of that particular use, as opposed to putting it in your bylaw and saying, oh, we're going to sort of piece this out and say this doesn't apply, because it's not as clear as it could be. And also, so that is a substantive change. Do you have any questions about that? No? Okay.
So does that mean that they wouldn't be subject to site plan review?
Well, what it means, you don't know what it means.
Okay.
Yeah, we really don't know what it means.
So it could be an argument by them at some point.
Exactly. Since you don't know what this means, and then it's difficult to do, because typically when you're going to do a substantive change to a special permit area, you're going to look at it and you're going to have an analysis of it. And then if someone's going to make the argument, well, this doesn't apply to medical marijuana or what the particular type of use, then they make that argument, and that's made before the special permit granting authority, either the planning board, the ZBA, or the building inspector, and that determination can be made on the basis of the application presented. And that's typically how that would go. So then, oh, and then there was that further discussion as to whether or not the fact that the definition of the RMD wasn't included, but they have made that proposal that they would make a motion to amend and include the existing language, so we wouldn't have to worry about that. The next section is the 81263C, which changes the required content of the application. And I think, as Jean raised before, what we're looking at, our analysis of this bylaw, is whether it is internally consistent with the rest of the section. And changing the timing, changing the content of what has to be submitted, it makes it inconsistent. It would make it difficult for the planning board or for the review process to take place. And what you always look at as a bylaw is, does everybody know what they're supposed to do, and do we all know how this is going to be reviewed? And if it's internally inconsistent, that raises an issue.
And can we discuss the timing of the letter of non-opposition with the Board of Selectmen? So in the handout that was provided by the petitioner at the last meeting, that letter comes at citing profile time, which again is one step further beyond the management and operations that we just talked about previously, and again, after the application of intent. So at that point is when the Board of Selectmen will make a determination whether they're going to include for the application a letter of non-opposition or a letter of support. So all that would happen again after the application for site plan review in this environment, and it would also then be distributed to other boards for their review and comment prior to that citing profile and requirement for the letter of non-opposition. So there's a lot of sequential things there, I think, that are open for discussion.
Right.
Can I go back for a second?
Sure.
And this may be like a totally dumb question, but further back up, originally where RMD is defined, and it's registered marijuana dispensary. Is that that is a state term, correct? It's not a local term, and they're using the term dispensary very broadly. It's probably not an elegant word to have used, because that implies retail, but RMD doesn't really have anything to do with retail at all.
It has to do, well, it's included within that definition is a dispensary, but it's not a retail as in a commercial marijuana facility. But that definition that RMD definition that is going to be that is proposed to be inserted back in here, is already in your existing bylaw. And you're correct that it is directly the state law. It's not language that North Andover created, but it's a term of art or a term of
Well, that's a little bit,
term.
because my point, it's very interesting, because we use the term registered marijuana dispensary, you're right, exactly as a term of art. But when we get down to exclusions in 81266, we use the term sells or dispenses marijuana to the public very specifically, very narrowly there. And they're actually two different meanings of the same word.
Right,
You know, and
yes.
it means something completely different.
Yes.
So, yeah,
Yep. That is true.
okay.
And the medical license, again, as I understand it, it's a vertical license that would allow all those types of activities. So the dispensary, the processing, the cultivation, it's a vertical license. So they would be issued all those types of licenses.
From
Where
the state.
recreational may go a different path.
Yeah, okay.
And then the next issue is the 81264, and that is the within 5 days of receipt. It adds a mandatory 5-day referral time, which was discussed earlier. The town is undergoing an overall master planning effort to look at the zoning bylaw and the process for which applications, the entire land use area. So that is something to consider as to whether that's more appropriate to be considered within the context of that.
On the last sentence, so are you reading the failure to make recommendations within 35 days of referrals? So that means it's 40 days, or is that 35 days of the application? How would you interpret that?
I would interpret the last sentence to say 35 days from the date it's referred out.
To the other boards?
Yes.
Okay, so then it could be up to 40 days. If it took
Up
5
to-
days. 5 days plus 35 it could be a 40-day process.
It could. It's I think that language is probably getting to it's similar with a, when you review a subdivision and you refer something to the Board of Health and you're waiting for the Board of Health report to come back, they have a certain amount of
Yep.
days to review it. So that's a similar process. And then the last provision is the 81266, and that's the size of the dispensary. And what this does is it limits the size of a dispensary and does not limit the size or allows any other type of use to exceed the 20,000 square feet. So that's just saying, that's doing, what they're proposing to do is saying that this cultivation facility can be in addition to 20,000 square feet, but your dispensaries are limited to what the size of all medical marijuana facilities previously were limited to.
So it seems like tortured language.
Yeah.
What's the reason for the tortured language?
I'm not sure what the reason is for the tortured language. Maybe it was inconvenience, is just parsing it out before all facilities were limited to that size, and so they just were cutting it out, saying, okay, well, we're going to limit the dispensary to this size, but we're going to allow other uses to be larger.
It's hard to get your analysis out of this language, that if someone reads it, it's, oh, this means cultivation can be much larger.
Yeah, I'm interpreting it as that as long as you don't sell or dispense it to the public directly from the facility, it can be any size you want.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. As opposed to saying there should be no limits, except that if you sell it, it's 20,000. That would
Right.
be the more direct way of saying
Right.
it. Yeah.
And there is, yes, exactly. And that sort of completes running through this.
Well,
Running
actually,
through
while
the-
you're still on that, do you think the added language, that no medical marijuana facility located on the map parcel, et cetera, does that cover them dividing the property somehow, setting up a different,
For dispensaries.
yeah,
So what this.
for medical, I understand.
Just for
that.
medical, just right, because it's only dealing with medical marijuana dispensaries, or medical marijuana use. So yes, I think that if we added language into, just added language to reference the draft, which I assume will have a better term that we'll use, the draft that was issued 3/31/2017, and we cite to that, if they cited to that plan specifically and called it out, then that would limit dispensaries on that parcel. Regardless of how they chopped it up, it would still be referenced to that particular plan that was a part of the town warrant article. And I did, I'll save that for later. I mean, I will actually add to that. So I did, in reviewing the zoning moratorium, which I know we're not dealing with right now, I had a couple of conversations with the Assistant Attorney General who reviews municipal bylaws. And I did talk to her about this, including something like this, as to whether it would be acceptable to the Attorney General.
Okay.
And she did indicate that it would be.
Okay.
Because you're allowing the dispensary use on one portion of your medical marijuana overlay district.
Okay.
Do you have any questions?
Can you step back a little bit and put the bylaw in the context of what's going on at the state level and the evolution of the state law? And I get the fact that they have not fully laid out all the regulations and requirements and rules related to recreational marijuana. And I don't know exactly when that will happen, but I'm trying to position this application or proposal in the context of what might happen at the state level. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So well, the first thing I think you're right is that the regulations haven't been promulgated. There's a lot of proposed amendments to the recreational marijuana state law that are pending and are being discussed right now. So the other thing is that the Cannabis Commission, the CCC, hasn't been established yet. So there's a lot of unknowns. We don't really know exactly what we're going to be, what the law is going to be and what the regulations are and the type of use that is going to be allowed. But what we do know now is what was passed within the citizens, the referendum decision, which one of the things that's important here to recognize is that the petition states, or the statute now states, that no zoning bylaw can be passed that prohibits recreational marijuana on a lot where there is a registered medical marijuana dispensary. So that means if and this MMOD is extended to this parcel, then the town can't go back later and say, well, we don't want to have any recreational marijuana use on that parcel because you will have the medical marijuana use on it.
Let's follow that through.
Okay.
Because it's a little bit of a turn on the question I asked at the beginning, because this is the entire article we have is medical marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
If I interpret broadly what you just said, it seems to me that automatically they would have the full right to use this for recreational, full stop, no limitation at all. I don't think that's probably a fair interpretation, because you never know what's going to happen at the state level. They may put certain restrictions on it and make them a little bit different. But I'm a little bit trying to figure out, because it's being labeled as medical marijuana, but it clearly has implications for recreational marijuana. And while we don't know for sure what they're going to be, it would be good to know what possibly paths we could go down so that we could understand the implications.
Yes, the one thing I think to keep in mind is we don't know. All right, it is an unknown, but the statute states that a town cannot prohibit that use. But I would say that it doesn't mean that you cannot regulate it. You can regulate the use. So although you're not going to be able to say you cannot have any recreational marijuana on the site if you have a registered medical dispensary or marijuana dispensary on the site, it doesn't mean that when you go to enact a zoning bylaw, you can't regulate it to some extent.
No, but
So
well,
it's-
what we're
wouldn't be- it's-
being asked to do is to basically zone this entire property for medical marijuana use and have no restrictions on the size of that property. And so effectively, that seems to me that you're waiving all rights to restrict recreational, almost by definition, because once you've gotten in there, how do you shut the door? If you so choose to do that.
We don't know. So the statute does say that you can put reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions on it, so you can regulate it. It doesn't prohibit you from regulating it on the site. And it wouldn't be fair for me to even say whether I know or not, whether if you put in these regulations, so let's say a zoning bylaw was adopted with regard to recreational, and it limited the size of the cultivation center. And then if they went and they appealed that to the courts, would the court strike it down or would they uphold it? I don't know. Nobody knows right now.
So are you saying that if the town decides to put this on a ballot and opt out of recreational and become a dry town, similar to dry non-alcoholic towns, towns have a right to do that, that because if they already have a medical marijuana facility, would be stuck with it?
We don't know the answer to that question either.
Can I ask it a little different way? I thought you said that under current law, if you have a medical, you cannot prohibit recreational.
Right, the statute states that you cannot, you can't prohibit, wait, I'm sorry, I must have misunderstood your question. Sorry about that. So what I said.
What does the current statute say?
With regard to whether or not you can prohibit recreational marijuana,
Right.
you can't prohibit it on a site where there is a registered medical or registered marijuana dispensary, an RMD, existing. So if there is an RMD existing or an RMD on the site, then you cannot pass a zoning bylaw prohibiting recreational marijuana on that site.
Okay, so what you said is you can't prohibit, but what right would you have to restrict? So let's just say, this passes, so it's a medical marijuana proposal, and then 2 years from now, everything gets sorted out on the recreational. Would the applicant for this proposal have to come back to the town and get zoning relief to be able to use that facility for recreational?
So if you have a zoning bylaw in place regarding recreational marijuana cultivation or recreational marijuana use, recreational commercial, and that was in place, and you went through a process and you said, we want it to be, you had your site plan review process going on, and you have your dimensional and your density requirements with regard to that use, I would say that yes, they would have to go back to the planning board and get the proper zoning permitting for that use. Couldn't prohibit it, but you can regulate it.
Okay.
Because if you read the state law, it allows you to regulate it. But I'm saying this from my reading of it right now and from everything that I've listened to, but that doesn't mean that things will not change. And when the regulations come into place and if there's any amendments, that this could all change.
Which is exactly why a few years ago we passed a moratorium to let the laws get settled out and then, put the bylaw in effect, which is what's being proposed now. But the problem is, the only one thing with the recreational is, the one thing they're stating is that if you have the medical marijuana, you automatically get the recreational, it can't be prohibited. So it's a catch-22.
So essentially the way the law's been written is to say you can put a zoning moratorium in place, but it's not going to affect your medical
exactly.
state.
So we don't know what's going to happen, which
Right.
is the problem. We're doing something where we don't know what's going to happen. That was exactly what I said back with the medical marijuana. Let's put the moratorium so we know what the laws are.
So,
Now we're back in the same position, in reverse.
So, well, that's it. I mean, it's, like it or not, it's the recreational marijuana and the impact that'll have and whether this is, is really the thing that we don't know, but in fact, this is I think it's the big question. It really is.
So is it correct under current law that where you establish medical marijuana, you forfeit the ability to prohibit recreational?
Where there's a registered, there has to be a registered medical, or registered marijuana dispensary under the state law. And then then you can't prohibit it. It's not to say where there is a medical marijuana overlay district, it's to say where there's that registered dispensary, or dispensary in the broad term.
Can you talk a little bit about, we have this form that shows the steps of the RMD process. Can you talk a little bit about, like, how long has it been in place? How many applications have gone through it? How long does it take? That sort of thing.
Now, unfortunately, I'm not, I don't have those facts, but I don't know how many specifically have been.
And, I mean, is there any, and I guess I'm looking at the experience, have any of the applications been denied? Is there presumption under the law that if you come in with all the relevant information, you get approved? Or is it allow whoever, I mean, who even, the Department of Public Health, are they allowed to reject applications?
Yes, so, yes, they are, because there is some case law on applicants who have submitted the application process and they've been rejected and then they've sued and they said we can't do it. And so they have supported or upheld the rejection of the registration. So that has been upheld.
Okay.
So they're not just giving.
So there is some experience with it, and
yes,
you're not sure like how many of these?
No, I wish I did. I'm sorry, I don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. I mean, we could find out if we. So the other process question that I have, and this deals with actually the other article, which is the article related to the negotiations with the Board of Selectmen. How legally does that process work? The process that is embodied in, I think it's Article 10.
But a host community agreement?
Host community agreement, yeah. How does that work, and what is the sort of the
so a host,
legal?
Right, so that is just authorizing the town manager and the Board of Selectmen to engage in a negotiation process for entering into a host community agreement, and that type of process would be similar to any other type. I don't know if the town has entered into host community agreements before, where you have there could be some mitigation payments to the town and some understanding as to the long-term relationship.
I guess what I'm getting at with this is this host community agreement contingent on anything else? I mean, obviously, does it always happen after the RMD is approved, or does it?
It's in conjunction. It would be in conjunction. So it would be in conjunction because you have to, the RMD gets approved, but you have to have that letter of support from the town, and then you're going to have that negotiation going on at the same time.
But
so it's not going to be one after the other.
What would happen if hypothetically the Board of Selectmen couldn't reach an agreement with the applicant? What happens then?
Presumably, there wouldn't be that letter of support. I mean, that would be a process that they would inform the DPH about.
Okay,
and that
so
would
the
be,
letter of support is part of the DPH RMD
yes.
process?
Yep, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
that's what I was.
Oh,
so
that's, okay,
That's
yes.
officially, in a sense, where the Board of Selectmen give their approval. That's effectively the regulatory approval, yeah.
They have to do a letter of non-opposition or a letter of support, yes.
Okay.
And that host community agreement is negotiated and submitted, yes. Mhm.
Okay.
Let's go back to the moratorium and restricting of the use of recreational. So if the moratorium goes into place and an establishment becomes a registered medical marijuana overlay, the moratorium would not apply to that establishment, right? So we would not be able to restrict?
Oh, exactly, right, the moratorium would not, yes.
Does everyone understand that? So if they become a registered marijuana establishment, and we do approve the moratorium, the prohibiting of the recreational use to that establishment, once they become registered, we would not be able to do.
Right.
Right.
Which is
Sure, and that's-
effectively, I guess, it's another way of looking at it, that
So we
for
wouldn't,
this property, if you're approving medical, you're also approving recreational.
because we wouldn't have the bylaw in place, we wouldn't know those rules once they get promulgated to develop the bylaw.
Yeah, okay.
I think that's true, but I think also that there's one thing to keep in mind with what is before the board and before the town, is that this is a zoning amendment.
Right.
Right. I mean, this isn't the special permit process yet. We're not there yet.
No.
We're just at the process of amending the zoning bylaw.
Right.
Yeah.
So you made some observations on state law. Any observations on federal law as it may apply?
I don't really have any observation. I mean, the federal law is, I think that's in flux too, sort of the federal
Seems to be.
take on this at this point. Yeah, so
Yeah.
there's a lot of unknowns at this point of where the industry, it's an industry, and where it will go and how it will be regulated within Massachusetts and also by the federal government, how that's going to be viewed. But I think we're going to know shortly.
Right.
I have something that's not included, what we did, basically, the medical marijuana overlay district, some of the procedures, 8.12.6, I think we should probably look at them, and we probably want to add some stuff that's more applicable, that's come up since then with medical marijuana. I know Peter, I don't think it's as clear in here as something that Peter was saying about odors and stuff. I mean, we have a no nuisance and stuff like that, but there's been additional best practices out there, and this is almost 4 or 5 years old, and it was pretty new industry, so I think maybe if we're getting it another chance, we might want to look at this section too. If we do have submittals, we want to make sure that all the submittals are listed in here that are required, because we don't want to have an incomplete required submittal list from the district.
Gene, anything else?
Well, I have
Yeah, go ahead, Pete. Yeah.
It's not related to these edits, but, I mean,
Go ahead. Yeah.
so, one of the things that the applicant had mentioned was, research, and we've heard, as much as 50% of the facility perhaps dedicated to research. And one of the things the applicant noted was through entities such as NIH, National Institutes of Health, which would be a natural place for research on something like marijuana. And typically that's done from NIH with academic institutions at least involved. That's who NIH funds. So if RMDs may not be located within 500 feet of schools, college, or universities, or university, is it possible then to have university faculty and students at the facility doing the research? Is it possible to have schools, universities doing research at the facility if they're prohibited from being within 500 feet?
So, let me make sure I understand what you're asking. So if this is a medical marijuana cultivation center, and they also want to have a sort of a mixed-use aspect of it, of a research aspect for looking at that?
I think that's what we're being told, and some of
Right.
the statements suggest up to 50% of it for research. I mean, that's a lot. That's 500,000 square feet.
So this is one
So-
way.
So I guess my question is, research is not exclusively school-based. There's such a thing as industry research. But when you talk about something like NIH, that is predominantly school-based research. And how could you have school research at a facility where schools are not allowed within 500 feet?
So this, I think, speaks to, sort of brings up a good issue of the technical aspect of this proposal, and that is it's calling out that specific use, the recreational, the research use is saying it's not a part of the medical marijuana use, and it should be treated differently under the bylaw. But I think if you don't take that out and you include it within your medical marijuana overlay district as a part of that special permit review process, that type of use can potentially be allowed, because you have that ability to look at it broadly and look at it with your regulations and make that determination. But I think that it becomes complicated if you start pulling pieces apart and saying one thing is something else and this is opposed to each other, and you don't know where, essentially what happens is you don't know the answer to those questions, and they're raised by the bylaw as proposed.
I mean, it seems to me that it's a large-scale commercial cultivation, marijuana cultivation facility, but what we're hearing a lot of is, well, it's research. And I'm having a hard time sorting out where that line is.
Right, and I think that that line would be sorted out when an application is presented to the planning board, and that's, I don't think you can, so I feel like one of the sort of problems that planning boards are faced with when they're reviewing a proposed zoning amendment is we try to go and think about the project as submitted, what's going to be before us, and we look at whether there's a particular application that's before the planning board, as opposed to saying, it's just, this is the zoning amendment, and this is, what does that mean that can come before you under,
So
with
let me
regard to
rephrase
this
the question. As a zoning amendment, what does it say to you as town council? Is this a large-scale commercial marijuana cultivation facility, or is this a research facility? As the amendment is what does it say to you?
So I think if you take that language out, the language that tries to piece out the research and just say, and just treat it as the medical, an RMD as defined under the state law, then I think it's a broader use. I think that you can have the research, and I think you can look at it in a broader use, and that you can regulate that use with regard to what you're doing with the medical marijuana, when you're cultivating it and processing it and all. I don't think it's specifically limited with your existing bylaw. That's how I read it.
So you think that language isn't really necessary? It just makes
I
it
think
more confusing and may generate special permit site plan review issues?
I do.
Okay.
I do. I think it.
Which would actually delay the process if it has to go through an appeal process,
And it also, then your issue is do you have jurisdiction over this? You're setting up a different issue. You're almost setting up, almost an argument. The town saying, oh, we have jurisdiction over this. No, we don't. Look, you passed this, and you had this intention of not having some jurisdiction over some marijuana use.
Right.
And then how's it going to be reviewed? So.
And how do we really know, in all honesty?
Exactly. Right.
So I think I just have one more question. That's okay. So I wasn't here when the medical marijuana overlay district was formed, but part of what we've heard here is we're just going to take an existing town district, and all we're going to do is extend it. And the town's already created the district, so we're just extending it. But my question is, when the town created the district, did it contemplate industrial cultivation on this scale?
Oh, because look at the size that we
Well,
have.
that's
Yeah.
why I'm asking. So this gets to your, I think, original construct of the analysis, which is really in two parts, and one part is changing the thing, substantive changes. And so is that what you meant, that this is one of the substantive changes? It's a change of scale that was not contemplated, in fact, was limited. When the town passed the overlay district, it said, okay, we're going to do this, but there's limits. And one of the substantive changes here is It's not just expanding it, it's expanding it and saying those limits are removed. Is that a fair
Yes,
description?
that is fair. It's fair, yes.
Peter,
It is. It's-
cultivation wasn't even thought of, in all honesty. When we were looking at this, I mean, we may have put stuff in there, but it was really about dispensaries, in all
But
honesty.
when you limit
Yeah,
it to
because that was
20,000
the
square
si-
feet, you're having a de minimis impact on anything, but when you strike all limits,
Because it was also, there was the
potentially
25,
50 times bigger.
from what I remember with the 2,500, there was some research that, you know, you didn't want them too small of a location, you didn't want little pop-ups, you know, you wanted them a
Mhm.
reasonable size, they needed some sort of, it's actually, I guess, a big footprint for inventory, you know, the product itself, so they needed so much in inventory and stock rooms, that, I remember that was like a 2,500 suggested. I forget where we found it, but we found it somewhere, suggested size and stuff like that, so no one was even really thinking cultivation at the time. I
So
mean,
Rebecca's researched some other bylaws, and I believe we found 4 towns that had the same
Same,
language
yeah.
as us. We just can't find the source of what was used, but obviously
Yeah.
there was a source, and it seems that other
Right.
towns included that same model bylaw.
Yeah.
The only thing that I would say is that the existing bylaw allows for cultivation.
Oh, it allows
Oh,
for it, but it wasn't really, we weren't, the sizing was all based on, I remember the discussion was based on, you know, dispensary. I mean, not saying we weren't thinking that, what Peter was asking. We were thinking of 1 million square feet. No one was thinking that someone would be growing plants out somewhere in an acre of land. We
Mhm.
weren't even contemplating that, you know.
Okay, so, we may need to have a workshop on this, or some further discussion on this. Because right now, we only have the May 2nd meeting scheduled before town meeting. So we may, think about, you know, if we want to spend some time working on this, either we do it on May 2nd or we schedule something separate.
Probably have to schedule something separate, because it's already 9:30.
Yeah, that's what I mean, this is, you know, so maybe everybody can tell Jean when they have time next week to, maybe we'll do a night next week. I think that'd be the best thing
So
to
add
do.
another public hearing or a
Well, I mean,
workshop?
our meeting is going to be in public, whether we, you know, we ought to just
Okay.
put that on as a continuation and, you know, as long as it's in public and it's duly
Yeah,
noticed.
that's fine. I didn't know if you
yeah.
meant a workshop with 2 members, not a quorum, and.
No, we
So-
try to get a
Public hearing,
quorum,
okay.
just if everybody can go back and check their calendar about when
I
they
think
have
it's a
time.
good idea.
Yeah, I don't see any other way around it.
Okay.
no.
Well, we don't have a lot of time to use,
No.
so.
That's what I mean,
Yeah.
we don't, yeah, so.
Okay,
And
so we'll shoot
John,
for
I just
next
want to say, it's very helpful to have town council here and such tremendous clarity of analysis on short notice, and
Yes.
very, very helpful.
Could be there next week, maybe.
Maybe you'd like to come and join us again, so.
Oh, yes, I
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really
We'll
good.
we'll make it earlier for her to accommodate her.
Yeah, there you
Yeah,
go.
we don't have to do 7.
No, I don't mind, whatever's more convenient for
Yeah,
it's fine.
It's great.
yeah, good, thank you.
So the new public hearing needs to be opened, and do you want to stay for that as well, the moratorium?
Okay.
So you would like to continue this to a date that will be determined next week, and I'll make sure you're informed of
What?
Do it all at once.
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I'll shoot for one of those.
The moratorium
I don't think we want it
also
Friday.
to that.
Well, let's have a short
Schedule the-
discussion on that now.
Um,
On the moratorium one? Do you want
We
to
have
have a
to
very
open.
short discussion on that now?
Yes, I just want, you agree to continue this to a
Yeah.
date next week. I will inform the petitioners of that date. We'll shoot for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I'll get your availabilities and confirm
Yeah.
that. And then if you would, just open the next hearing.
Okay. So, the next item will be that public hearing warrant Article 12. And,
No, double check.
We're also continuing Article 11, the map itself.
Yes.
too.
yeah, the map itself, yeah. Can you talk briefly about 12?
Again, for the reasons discussed tonight, in that the regulations related to recreational marijuana will not be promulgated until likely sometime in March next year. to be finalized by July 1st. Town council has actually drafted this moratorium article, and it has been submitted to the Board of Selectmen. They have actually completed their review of it and voted favorable action on this one. On the last two that we just discussed, they did not vote to take action yet. They are waiting for the planning board decision, or recommendation, I'm sorry, on those two articles. So this one they did vote on and recommended favorable. And again, you should have a memo included in your packet from town council to, I believe, the Board of Selectmen, what was it best to? That details the reasons for having a moratorium. And it does come at the Attorney General's office recommendation to implement a moratorium on this recreational use.
Okay. So, if we can,
Yes, so we attended, Jean and I attended a seminar regarding the effect of having the marijuana statute. And there was a consensus across the board from the Attorney General's office and town councils and planners that it is a smart move for each town to enact or adopt a zoning moratorium, which gives the town the ability to wait until the regulations come out, because there has to be the Cannabis Commission, which is going to be promulgating the regulations and determining how this use will evolve. And if we don't have if a zoning moratorium isn't in place, then you don't have any zoning that regulates the use. So it is important they advise to put this in place.
okay.
And the other thing I just want to briefly mention is that I know the proponent of the medical marijuana, the extension, has requested that there's a specific carve-out for medical marijuana facilities, and that was a request, and I have sort of given my opinion to the Board of Selectmen and the town manager that I wouldn't recommend doing that, because the law and the regulations are in such flux right now. What that attempts to do is put the law as it stands into our zoning moratorium and have that carve out that's there. But we don't know if that's going to change once the regulations get promulgated. So that I would suggest not doing that and just doing the blanket moratorium.
Okay. So, getting back to that, you're saying is the way the law is set up now says if you have an RMD, you can't restrict the usage of recreational at that location. But you're saying that may change.
You can't prohibit, but you may restrict.
Yeah, you can't prohibit it.
But we don't have any restriction today.
Right.
So
we don't know. I mean, the reality is we don't know if there's going to be amendment to the state law that changes that, or if
well,
it's
that's the
going to be...
point is the state law would change.
Right.
Potentially, it could change completely and
Right.
say that if you have one, you can't have the other.
Exactly.
Or it could say you could. I mean, it could be any number of things. You're just not sure which way the law is going to go.
Right. And if it changes and you have a zoning moratorium that says you can't prohibit it, then you're not changing with the law.
Yeah, you're not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions from the board?
Since the selectmen have already voted on it, do we want to vote on that, or we want to hold that one open?
Well, let's hold. I mean, I prefer to hold them up and deal with them both together. Yeah.
So that if you do vote on them, they can be included in the warrant as printed with the recommendation in the warrant, instead of just...
When do you need them?
I think if the warrant hasn't gone to print, I think it goes tomorrow.
I prefer to vote on it then now. I prefer to have it in the warrant.
On which one?
The moratorium.
Okay, well, if you want to do that, then that's fine.
Yeah. I'll make a motion to approve the warrant Article 12 as printed. Favorable recommendation for the planning board.
Okay, as printed and it doesn't include that carve out that, yeah, okay. So do I hear a second?
Second.
And any further discussion?
Clarification for the new guy, is this a situation where I get to vote, give days absence?
Actually, technically, no, but
Just
you can vote, you can vote anyway, and we can record it, because frankly, it's more of an opinion poll than anything else. I mean, technically, it has no standing, but, you know, so, all in favor? Aye. Do you, yes?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, good, so it's unanimous.
So we have the non-zoning articles that you may choose to bring. We have a couple petitioners here.
Okay.
That are requesting discussion. One is Brook School and one is 1812 Turnpike Street. So I don't know if you want to bring them ahead of the remaining non-zoning
Yeah,
articles.
why don't we do that, yeah, so. Sorry to torment you, have tormented you for all these interesting things, but somebody has to go last. Okay, let's see, who's here for Brook School? And who's here for 1812 Turnpike Street? Okay, there's more of you, so you go first.
Wow.
Before 6 o'clock, so
Yeah. Oh, what's that?
Brooks has been here before 6 o'clock.
Oh, okay.
However, town council is also here for 1812 Turnpike, so, okay.
Okay, flip a coin.
Just trying to make everybody semi-happy, you know? So if you promise to be quick, we'll let you guys go first.
I'll be quick,
Yeah.
So they're here to, in 2003, the planning board designated the town planner at the time, Judy Timon, the ability to approve a land disturbance permit to allow installation of a solar array. And that permit has since expired, and they were not able to construct that solar array. Conservation, they also had a permit where they were able to extend that permit another year to give them the ability to construct that. However, ours is expired, and they would like to discuss what the next step is for the planning board in order to move forward with the construction of the solar array.
Yeah, so my name's Ben Axelman. I work with Nexamp. We're a solar energy company that is now working with the Brook School to bring this project to fruition. This is a project that was originally contemplated back in 2013 with another developer. That developer received permits from the planning board and the Conservation Commission, but never got the project built. We've now contracted with the Brook School and are hoping to step in and finish up this project this summer. So we're hoping to discuss, given that the land disturbance permit has expired, whether or not it's possible to, what the next steps are, like you said, to whether it can be extended, whether we can reapply administratively, or whether we need to restart the whole process and go in front of it for new hearings. We're planning to move forward with the same layout, same just about the same design as previously approved. So we're looking for guidance on how you'd like us to move forward on this.
Did you say 2003?
I did, but it's 2013.
13, okay.
So can we just get a reminder of what is the layout and location?
Do you have the plans?
I do not.
You did not bring the plans?
I did not bring the plans with me.
So the location is across Spring
Yeah.
Pond Road on a vacant parcel of land that
Correct.
Brooks owns.
That's up the hill?
Yeah, exactly.
1160.
I forget the acreage, but
It's 13 acres of solar. It's a 1.3 megawatt solar array. Electricity from the project is being used to offset the school's electric bills. We're leasing the project. We'll be owning it and selling power back to the school.
Wait, I'll tell you, I don't remember this one.
I wasn't on the, who's on the?
2013.
13.
For some reason, I have a vague recollection of this, but I don't know what. You know what it might have been? I think I shouldn't admit this, but I read prior minutes before I started on the board.
Oh, boy, that's sad.
It's very sad, yeah.
Well, I mean, the problem we have is, I'm not even, this comes in, this is a similar sort of thing, if you think about it, to what we do with the special permits, where we have 2 years. And if it's not done by 2 years, it expires.
That's
I mean, the
what's
problem is, at some level, you either have rules or you don't have rules. You either have timeframes or you don't have timeframes. I mean, that's
Right.
what
No,
I feel is almost coming out.
I think they acknowledge that it has expired. And so in the last permit, the bylaw for land disturbance allows you to designate the town planner to administratively approve the permit. And so she did all the review and wrote the decision. But there was a motion to allow her to administratively approve it.
Who voted on that motion, do you remember?
Does it say it on on here. I'd have to pull the minutes.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you had it, okay.
How much square
Because-
footage did you say this is covering?
2018.
Approximately 118,000 square feet of wooded area will be cleared for installation of the solar array.
That's all, hey, boy, I'll tell you, that's 118,000, that's 2 acres,
Oh, plus,
right?
Yeah.
plus. yeah.
3, it's nearly 3.
Closer to 3.
Yeah,
Closer to 3.
and you guys decided to.
That's why. So this is the scaling of solar.
Yeah.
Solar and wind don't scale.
And they only had a land disturbance, they didn't have a watershed also? There's nothing in the
It's outside
watershed?
of, I believe it's outside.
But
of
we
the
did, I mean, we got to see this.
Yeah.
That's why, because the planning board didn't see this.
They came in for a presentation, and
Presentation.
at that meeting, it was, again, motion to allow the planner to act
Yeah.
as the board's agent.
I tell you, I'm drawing a blank on this one.
Okay.
Yeah. I'd like to
I don't
see it.
remember it all either.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at the notice of decision, and it's signed by Judy, and, you know, on our decisions, it lists the planning board members.
Right,
There
look
are
at-
no planning board
Look at
because
the
it's,
motion, look at the motion, it's to designate the town planner.
right, but it doesn't say,
Right, it doesn't have the listicle motion, the minutes would have that.
yeah.
Well, I think you have a consensus that you're probably gonna have to come back and see us.
Yeah.
So file for a land disturbance permit?
Yeah.
So file a full application for a land disturbance permit.
Either
Sounds
way,
good.
that step would be in place. It's just a matter of, it goes through the public hearing process and approval by the board or the designated agent. I think we've had a lot of experience with solar
Because
since this
why,
application.
if you're clear cutting that much land, wouldn't you have the same problems you have? Remember how we just got done on these common driveways, and the one we're still dealing with about whether it's more than 1 acre and whether you'll need a drainage permit and so
Right,
forth. And
this went through stormwater review, but
yeah,
um, I think it's fair to say we have a lot more experience in solar and file the application. And I will pull those minutes, but
yeah,
it can go through the hearing process as well.
yeah. Okay. Right.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Sorry about that, but that's the way life is.
Fair enough.
Okay. The next on the
Okay.
agenda is 1812 Turnpike. In February 2016, the planning board approved a site plan review special permit for renovation to an existing structure in order to construct a 5,000 square foot, 1.5-story building for an auto repair facility with an attached pizza/sub restaurant. Staff received a call from the Selectman's office about an application for a Class 2 license to sell used cars on this lot. As part of the planning board decision, it was stated under condition J, this project approval does not include automobile sales of new or used cars. This restriction is required due to the parking spaces provided and the parking limitations of the site. If the development chooses to include automobile sales, a modification to the site plan special permit must be applied for through the planning department. So the applicant is here to discuss with the board his intentions for applying for the permit.
Okay. Steve Height, representing George. So as you know, we got the site plan approved a year and a half ago now, and so it's constructed. George is in, he's operating.
On a temporary permit, occupancy permit.
Occupancy, yes, temporary CO for his, the business. The restaurant is not open yet. Right now, the last work that still needs to get done is the finished pavement, the striping, and the signage, and the landscaping, and that stuff's going to be done this week and next week. As you know, we had a couple of snowstorms. Based on what Rebecca just indicated, George, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm trying to use his words, what he was talking about, but interestingly enough, since he's moved here, his business has actually done quite well, which is, he was very happy to have that happen. And one of the things we had talked about when we came to the planning board originally was the number of parking spaces required was based on square footage for both his business as well as for the restaurant. Originally, we had anticipated 6 internal bays. There's only 4. There's actually only 4 locations inside. And we were talking about why the number of parking spaces would be required. There's 28 parking spaces on site right now. And based on what George's business does right now, and correct me if I'm wrong, but 15 cars a day is a really good day, and that's actually very doable for what he's got for his site. So we have an excess of probably about 10 parking spaces on site as it sits right now. Why is that important? Because part of the business that he does right now is provide service for dealers for their vehicles, used car dealers. They come in, he deals with fixing their vehicles, and they take them on site. So he has dealer plates on site for other people that he works for, as well as the fact he has to take them out on drives when he fixes them. Interestingly enough, because he fixes cars and everything else, people come to him all the time and ask him, does he sell used cars? And one of the restrictions we had talked about originally was, at his current facility, he doesn't do that at all. I don't think you had contemplated it at that point. And with this facility here, with the space that he has and what's happening with the business, he has had people come in and ask him for that. And with the dealers that he is dealing with now, not that he wants to sell their cars, but if he has the opportunity to sell cars for himself, he would like to take that opportunity now as well. The interesting thing is the limitation associated with what the dealer license actually requires. It says you can only, there's no scaling of it. It doesn't say you can go for 5 cars, 10 cars, or 25. It comes in with an application for 25. So part of this discussion is to let you guys know is where we're at with the project, which is we're going to be complete here probably in the next 2 weeks. Everything that was on the original site plan will be done. And then the restaurant, what's the schedule for the restaurant?
3 or 4 months.
3 or 4 months. I don't think you have a tenant for that yet. There's no concrete floor in there right yet. But that, coupled with the work that he's actually doing right now in the business, he would like to have a conversation with you guys about being able to sell some cars on site as well.
Well, you have a parking space ratio problem. The zoning enforcement officer says you need 27 parking spaces. 2 parking spaces need to be accessible, 1 would be van accessible, and so you only have 1 extra parking space on, you have 28, you need 27, so how can we, and you don't even have a tenant in there, so we don't know the demand on the restaurant. The restaurant could be higher, restaurant could be low.
So this is a 900 square foot restaurant right now. It's based on the square footage for the restaurant, gives you the number of parking spaces. The same thing with the retail, not the retail, but the car fix-it shop. It's based on 2 per internal, and then let me get it.
Yes.
It's 2 per bay.
It's on the screen too, if you can read that over there.
It's 2 per bay, 2 spaces per service bay. We originally anticipated 6. You got storage 1,000 square feet, 1.5 spaces of that. And then you have restaurant, 900 divided by 1,000 times 15, you got 14 spaces for that. What's interesting is with his total usage right now, if he does 15 cars a day, which is a very good day for him, he's got 4 cars inside. He's got 4 or 5 cars waiting to be picked up, and then another car coming in. Most of the vehicles that he works on they drop off in the morning, they come and pick up in the afternoon. So the turnover rate is not that they sit there very long. They're internal, they get worked on, they move out, and they move the other people back in. So relative to the restaurant, if the restaurant is in operation at the same time, they're not you're going to be commingling the use of these parking spaces at different times. So you wouldn't have the parking spaces during the day when you have the need. And again, we got 14 parking spaces out front and the same number of parking spaces out back. And what we did was we designated specific parking spaces out back, but we have plenty of parking area and maneuvering area for doing the work that he needs to do. So what we had done here with this plan was to show you where an area, if he could have up to 5 display spaces for up to 5 cars, if he was going to be able to sell those. It's ancillary to his business. I know it's an allowed use, but the reality of what he's got here is that actually it's good. It's good for what he's looking to try to do. He has the need. People are coming to ask him for it, and the business is hopefully going to be even a bit more successful than it is right now. So happy to report is doing well.
So the idea is that there'd be up to 5 cars on the lot that would be for sale. even though the permit, you said
There'd be no
the
waivers.
permit is 25.
Right. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm George. George Atala. So my main thing, the main thing here is I just want to be a professional repair place. I have a lot of dealers, they come in with used cars to be fixed, safety checks to be sold and put back on the road. And the only way for me to do that, which is part of my business, is to go through the cars, take them on a test drive, make sure everything is fine before I give them back to the dealer so they can sell them. On the other hand, it does happen to me. People come in, they have a car, needs to be fixed, they don't want to fix it. Too much money, do you want to buy it? You want to get rid of it. I want to be able to buy that car cheap enough because it needs some repairs, turn around, fix it, and be able to sell it to somebody else. But my main thing is my repair, and I really don't have the time and the space to go and to the auction and buy cars and have 25 cars on my land, because first of all, we don't have a space for it, and second of all, that's what I do for a living, and I don't have the time to spend and open a dealership selling cars. I do repairs. So I just want to be a professional place to be able to fix the cars, test drive them, need a plate, and if I can make a little extra money with the car that I can buy from customers, that would be great.
The dealer interaction and repairing a dealer car, taking it for a test drive, that does not require this license, correct?
That is correct. It does not specifically require that license.
So that's an operation you do today, you've always done, and you've continued to do with the new location.
Right.
But the difference here is at your previous location, you did not sell cars.
I did not sell cars.
And
every
that
time
use was discussed during the public hearing and.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I frankly, you know, we went through a very elaborate public hearing, and we were very careful, and I think you put a lot of thought and effort into it, and this never came up. I feel a little had.
It actually
Yeah.
specifically came up, you weren't going to do it, which is, you know, opposite to what you're coming in, not, applying to select them for, so.
So at the old place where I was before, at the BP next to Stop and Shop, I was renting there, and there was no question for me to buy and sell cars because Roger is there. That's what he does for a living. He buys, sells cars, and sells the gas. I was renting just the repair shop from him. And every time I needed to go on a test drive or anything with any of the cars that was no plates on them, I used to go to Roger and borrow a plate and go and finish my work. And that's why I was getting around it. Now I'm on my own. I moved from there, I left that place, and I'm trying to keep going and do the same thing I was doing before. And at the same time, because
I think you answered Gene's question wrong. Gene asked you, do you need a license to sell cars to get a dealer plate to do the test driving? I think you answered it incorrectly from what George is saying.
So the answer to that question is you do not need a dealer license to be able to fix dealer cars.
Okay, but he can't take it for a test drive.
Correct. He needs to have a plate for that car to take it off site.
But again, you don't need the license
But you
to
do not
have a
need
dealer
the,
plate.
that's exactly correct. You
Okay.
don't need the
So then why-
license.
So then you can still get the dealer plate and not sell cars, correct?
Isn't it a repair plate?
Yeah.
It's not a dealer plate.
It's not.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
You don't need.
So you can still take, so that's not, that's not stopping you from fixing cars and taking for a test drive, like you just said?
No, but the answer to that question is no, it does not stop them from taking cars off-site and doing the repairs, but,
Okay.
so there's a couple things. When people bring their vehicle to the site, it's a dealer plate on it, and it might have a for sale sign on it, that's not his. That's someone else's, so he's not selling anything there.
Right.
Because those aren't his. But
So
what
you
he'd like to do is, he would like to take advantage of the fact that it works. People want to have, and he wants to be able to take advantage of using that with what he's doing now. So yes, we had talked about, he doesn't sell cars at the current facility because that's not part of the business. His car is a professional repair facility, and at this point, he'd like to expand that use to be actually include the ability to actually sell some cars off the site.
So, John, I have a little different reaction than I think you have to this. And maybe I shouldn't, but my reaction is that he owns a place, he started to operate it, and he's learned something that didn't expect when he was here. And so my reaction is, okay, if you've learned that there's an opportunity, what process do you need to go through? I mean, I'm just kind of neutral on it.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
Yeah.
He would need to go through the modification process with the planning
Yeah.
board, and then he'd need to apply for a Class 2 license with this Board of Selectmen, which your original license he withdrew.
To that end, I don't think George understood that there actually was a restriction on the application, the approval, even though it says it's J. We didn't have that conversation until after we did this, and then it was, maybe J says it can't have, so we went up to the selectmen asking for that license. It got back to the planning board. He was not trying to circumvent the process. I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, and, you know, sorry about that, but, so we're here tonight to explain, to make sure everyone's understanding why.
So where does 25 come from?
Well, we actually.
That's what the license, that's what the license says. You have,
So
Can I ask a question about the sale?
Sorry, the use in the general business district allows up to 25 cars
yeah.
for sale when it is permitted, so when they do have permission to have it, they can sell up to 25. Now, there's been the site that he came from, and it's a different owner selling cars there, but we've certainly had some interaction in that there's more than 25 and have had discussions with that applicant. So that's just the number, and as Steve said, they're not tiered, and so when you get that license, my understanding is you get it for up to 25, if that's what you choose.
There's no.
So there's an enforcement component here
Right.
that I'd be
And they'll need
concerned.
and they'll need parking relief because.
And they'd need parking, reduction or,
Without having the site fully developed.
I think the neighbors need to. I think that when you're turning it into, no offense, but if you're gonna turn this into a car lot, are you, well, but you're talking about selling cars. I think the neighbors need to be
I
able to
mean,
come
my-
in and speak about this, because
my
I would feel
princ-
very differently.
Yeah, no,
I would
we
feel
understand,
very
we
different.
understand to do the process, we're gonna come back in front of the planning
But I have
board.
I have another question. So, can you sell a certain number of cars without being a dealer? Isn't it that you can sell one car if someone wants, no, you can't? I thought you could.
If you sell it,
People
I I think someone here in the audience has an answer.
She's
if we
saying
wanna
no.
give
I
her
thought
an
you could.
opportunity.
I thought you could.
I
Yes.
can respond to that,
Good.
just because I have been looking at these. So you do need a Class 2 license to sell used cars. But you don't, the town has, or the Board of Selectmen has issued a Class 2 license to internet car salespeople that never have cars on site. So just because you have that Class 2 license doesn't mean you need to have a car on site, and so it can be a limited license. I just wanted to clarify that.
is the license restricted to not having car on site?
Yes. So the license issued by the Board of Selectmen for some car dealers is no cars on site. And the only thing that the person has as a business is an office space, but no cars.
Can you also limit the number of cars
That they would have on site?
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
So even though the permit would be for up to 25, you could limit that?
Right, you would, so you would, so the planning board could certainly do it, and also the Board of Selectmen could say this is a Class 2 license for either no cars on site, because they have done that, 2 cars on site, or however many.
And so how we arrived at 5, as opposed, I heard what you said, you know, we can limit to 2, to 1, whatever it is. What we did is I did the parking calculation relative to what his existing use is now, in terms of where he's at. The 15 cars a day, the number of people that he has working, the number of cars that he has inside, the rotation of that as well. The restaurant itself would be, you know, from a noon time to on, so the busy time is going to be when he's closed. So you're commingling, not commingling, what's the right word? When someone else is using that same parking space.
There's various times, multiple uses.
Yeah, multiple use on the same parking space. So if you have one parking space, you get 2 different users on that same parking space, they don't necessarily overlap. So when I was looking at those numbers, and what we were looking at for the number of spaces, 5 was the number we came up with, and what George was talking about in terms of his volume. I mean,
But his volume's gonna do better. You said he just opened, he's doing better. So if there's volume in 6 months, he's not gonna have those 5 spaces left.
so, so the volume is also limited to how number of spaces he has actually available inside the building. So right now, he doesn't do 15 cars a day. What he's telling you, what he's telling us is that 15 cars a day is where he wants to get to. So by the time he gets to 15 cars a day, he's gonna be extremely happy to get to where he's at. So right now, that's the limitation associated with the number of parking spaces. So if he can get 15 cars a day, correct me if I'm wrong, George is a very, very happy man, and he's hit a peak that he can make this project. He's happy with it.
To me,
So,
make a few general thoughts, because you're certainly willing to come out and with a proposal to modify the thing. That's your prerogative to do. The things that I think you should do as part of that, first of all, I think you have to finish all the landscaping and everything else to that site. I mean, that site is right on 114. It's very visible as people come into town. We like to have a good entrance. It's actually close to another commercial building. It's actually fairly attractive. It's close to those new apartments that I think are fairly attractive and have a good street presence. So, we were going to come back to you anyway and say, where's the landscaping, where's this, where's that? So that was going to happen anyway.
They're operating on their second temporary CO from the building inspector.
Yeah. So,
but
my
in
point
terms of-
ends up being
I get
is
that.
that even to get to the starting point for this, you got to jump some hurdles, and you got to be prepared to fill them. And secondly, I think Laura's point is, when I saw the number 25, I said, oh my God, we don't want to have something that's chock full of cars with signs and, those plastic flags and, if you're going to do something, you're going to really have to really think about the lowest possible number you can, and you do it in a way that's unobtrusive, because when you park a bunch of cars right next to each other, put signs on them, that's the thing that looks like hell, and that's the thing, I'm telling you right now, we would not go for that. So you got to think of doing it in a way that's very careful, very unobtrusive. That's my point.
So, two things. In terms of the temporary COs, the intent was that the work was going to be done quite a bit sooner than it is going to be happening now. We have had weather, so that's where it's working. But they're working towards that. We do have a schedule to get that work done. Most of that, the paving is going to be done, landscaping is going to start this week, and then paving will be done either this Friday or the following Friday. Landscaping will come first before they do the finished paving. So rest assured that will be done before we come back to the board for that. As you did point out, it is an attractive building, it is an attractive site, and I think George is pretty proud of the way it turned out. He's happy and did a really good job with that. And the landscaping, everything else, it's like your house. He wants to make sure it stays nice and neat and clean, the same way as what you're looking at it. What you said is exactly what George had said to me originally as well, is that he does not, this is not, being in a car dealership is not his business. His business is to be in a repair shop. He does a good job with that, and to be able to sell the cars, have the opportunity to sell the cars when they come up, that's what he's looking for to help enhance his business.
So just one question. You have space in the building for 2 more bays, right?
No.
So you made them large, 4 bays larger, or?
No, because some of the zoning constraints we had, we went through a couple of iterations in terms of the building actually got smaller.
Okay.
So with the setbacks and side yard setbacks, we had to make the building smaller, so we weren't able to make it as long as we needed to get those 6 bays. So right now you have 3 against one side, and you have a lift on the other side, so there's 4 in there. So there's 4 spaces, which is good, and you got to come take a look at it.
Have you guys seen the building?
We don't.
Yeah, stop by. Yeah, no, stop by. So the purpose of being here tonight was, one, just to let you know how we got to where we're at, why potentially we're looking for that modification, to read the board and see what you guys were thinking about that.
Well, I think our landscaping plans, our fencing plans, would have been a lot different if you said you're gonna sell used cars on the property. I don't think anyone wants to see, $9.99 with green fluorescent numbers on the road right there. It's very, as you know, the setbacks from the roads were very small. We accommodated less screening because you didn't have the space. On a lot of it, most of them, we would have required a lot more landscaping, but because you had the highway where you couldn't do anything within, the right of way, it was a non-conforming lot already,
Is that gonna be an issue for me fixing all the used cars that come from the dealer that have flags on them and the stickers?
Well, they don't usually have, you have to drive them over there. They don't have the big $99
Well,
on
they
the
don't,
window.
but they have the
Yeah.
stickers on the windows and blah, 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 and they look there for sale.
Yeah.
And multiple people stop and ask me, are they for sale? And I said, no, they're not mine and they're not for sale.
But
They're
they-
probably for sale somewhere else, no.
But if you said that, if you're parking them out, we all know that you're gonna park them out with the numbers towards the road and all that stuff,
Yeah.
and, I think that.
So,
yeah.
I get that, and I understand the aesthetics associated with it as well.
Yeah.
So really, the
So
conversation.
You better think about that too,
Yeah,
that
and
aspect.
part of the conversation, though, is, ancillary to the business that he has, and, to be able to take the opportunity to take advantage of that as well.
Well, what the town council said is you can get the license and just not have them on site. You can put them up at the other guy's property, or whatever, or or have them on your own personal property and never have them on that road. You can fix them up in your shop, you can take them somewhere else and still put them on Craigslist and not just have them on the property. You can get your license
I
and do
don't
an
think
internet
that's
license.
very effective, but
People
we'll
know
get it.
that's a professional retail shop. I'm really like asking for 25 cars.
Okay.
If you guys give me a
Yeah, okay.
restriction for 5 cars and tell me, as a professional place in North Andover that looks the way it looks, I mean, we keep it clean and we keep it always sharp and it's the professional place and
Well, I
we
think,
made it that
I
way.
think you understand where we're coming from, so you're welcome to come back in, but just be well prepared, do your homework, make the site look nice, and we'll go from
The
there.
intent, absolutely, the intent to follow through everything else on the plan as well.
Okay,
All right,
great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so the remaining non-zoning articles, again, if you do determine that you're gonna vote favorable or unfavorable, we can include this in the warrant as well.
So what are we got 4 and 5 and
Right.
29, which is CPA, or are those the ones?
Yes, and you didn't vote yet on the capital improvement plan, again, you
Which,
choose to.
which one, I'm sorry?
Capital improvement.
Oh,
But 4 and 5 are allowing the board, the standard articles each year.
so do you want to try, let's do 4 and 5 first. Is everybody okay with those?
I'll make a motion for favorable action on Article 4.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
I'll make a motion for favorable action on Article 5.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. The capital improvement? Yeah, I mean, my only thing is just as a matter of personal principle, I don't want to agree to that intersection, I'm sorry. So either we hold it over till we get an answer or vote against it, which I would prefer not to vote against something that
Well, I think we
so-
should hold it over then.
Hold it over.
Yeah.
Would you like me to ask the town manager to attend the meeting and explain them?
No, just have somebody explain
Okay.
why it should cost $475,000
I'll
after
ask
we've
for
already.
whatever
The cost
detail-
breakdown.
Yeah,
What is it?
I'll ask for whatever
Yeah.
detailed backup there is. I'm
Yeah.
sure
I mean,
there is. notice
they're gonna put the traffic calming curves and,
Well, maybe they will, but I mean, I'm sitting there and going,
plan that they were gonna do that, but I was like, but it's still, I don't know how they get the 500,000.
that's what I mean, I
They
just,
probably already spent 500,000.
probably already, but then
Yeah.
that makes it worse
Yeah.
because it's $1 million, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
do you guys want anything on the CPA?
Yeah, why
Yeah.
we spent, I thought last year that we weren't doing any more cemetery, you said.
No, this is the last one.
No, last year you said it was the last one. We got
No,
two
I
this year.
didn't.
Yes, you did.
I didn't. Trust me, this is the, they do actually, if there's anybody that does a good job, it's them. I don't know if you know, like, the people in the cemetery, but they're very frugal with the money, and And the thing about it is, it's now on the National
I
Register.
did see they got it on the National
And
Register.
so I think it's that and like Mount Auburn are like the only cemeteries in the state just that are, that are on the National Register, yeah. So that's quite a coup. And so as I look at it, it's, now that place is good for the next 100 years, which is, you know,
great.
Which is what we want.
So next year we can spend money on the living opposed to the dead?
Yeah, as opposed to
Okay.
the dead. Yeah, what we're gonna spend the money on is the middle school athletic fields. That's where the money's gonna
And
go.
also maybe a little more on affordable housing?
Yeah, but there is getting the right model and getting the right property. I mean, one of the things that I think actually is pretty good is this Affordable Housing Trust it's got an interesting model, because, you know, we give them money from CPA so that they can go in and buy property when it comes up, when it comes available, because the problem ends up being is, you know, property doesn't necessarily become available right at the town meeting schedule. But what I like about what they're doing is they have a good business model. I think they understand the economics, but the biggest thing is that it actually is a way to help ensure that there's not properties in town that are deteriorating. And you think about that, that has a value above and beyond just making a housing affordable to somebody. It can help avoid deterioration of a neighborhood and can help improve a neighborhood. So it's got leverage
maintain
impact.
property values.
You know, yeah, maintain property values. So I think that's good. If anything, we're going to talk about maybe putting a little bit more into that in the future. The money to this point that we've put in for the affordable housing has really been for the town facilities. I know the veterans housing that we spent money on, and that actually is one of the projects this year. The people that live in that neighborhood are pleased, very, very pleased, very, very happy with the money that was spent, because what was happening was, that was another case of deterioration, is that the housing project was deteriorating, the neighborhood was pretty good. And now they've fixed up the places, they did it in conjunction with the neighbors, they like the color scheme and that sort of thing. So that one has worked out pretty well. The cool one, well, I was going to mention two things. One is this middle school athletic complex, I think, is really going to be a big deal when it gets done. I think we're going to be very pleased with that in the long term. And this year is the final design. There's a lot of community involvement in that. There's a lot of engagement. I think they did a pretty good job. You know, Terry Holland was always involved in those things. Anything that's good, he's usually involved in. But the other one that I think is really pretty cool is the fire equipment. We have a couple of old pumpers that are like the last ones left in the United States. I mean, this stuff is like really, really historically significant stuff.
Where's it been kept?
Well, they gave it away to Haverhill for a while, and they went and they pulled it back. But it used to be kept years ago in the Parson Barnard garage, or that, you know, shed that they had that. And then it's actually right in the Davis and Ferber mill. It's being kept there now, and then it will be permanently by the new firehouse. And then there will be available for 4th of July and parades and stuff like that. So it'll be really pretty cool. The stuff, if you haven't seen it, you'll love this stuff. It's really pretty neat. So I think that one is fun. So beyond that, I don't know if anybody has any other questions. So I can go through every one if you want.
I'll make a motion for favorable action on Article 29.
Second.
Any discussion?
No.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, I have one more thing. Please afford me 5 more minutes. I want to just give you a heads up on something that is starting to progress. So the Merrimack Valley Planning Commission has received grant funds to produce a regional housing plan. If you're not aware, our housing plan expired in 2012, and so we are way out of date on it. North Andover, along with 10 other communities in the region, have signed a memorandum of agreement to participate in the creation of this plan. Essentially, what the plan will do is each individual town will have its own chapter that can then be adopted. Well, it'll come before this board and the Board of Selectmen, and then qualified to be approved by the state. Once it's approved by the state, then it affords us some benefits that I'll get into, but the effort will include a significant outreach component and local workshops. The purpose of the housing plan is a tool and a process to assist the town in planning for developing strategies to create and preserve housing choice and diversity, including the production of more affordable housing units, but also to identify other housing needs and goals. And so that's the community outreach. You know, the word affordable gets applied to this plan quite often, but it's also to identify needs for either step-down housing, 55-plus housing, you know, just other components of housing needs that we really haven't looked at in quite some time. So in addition, the Affordable Housing and Planned Production Plan is required to meet requirements of DHCD's planned production provision of the 40B section, of Chapter 40B. With a DHCD approved plan, a community can earn an exemption from the provisions of 40B for a specified time. So again, it affords us some things that we can use to address when 40B applications come in, if we have an approved plan. So MVPC would like to send 2 representatives to your next meeting, the May 2nd meeting, to really explain the process, the goals, the methodology that they're going to use to go about this plan. Both the director and the economic planner up there would like to come in. And the important component of this is we will have to identify stakeholders and, you know, things that we've talked about in the office and with MVPC. It would be common to have somebody maybe on the Council of Aging, the Affordable Housing Trust, a planning board member, ZBA, Board of Selectmen, you know, to participate in local workshops, to solicit feedback. They have all kinds of tools now, online type surveys and community outreach things that they hope to implement that they'll cover at the next meeting. But again, school committee, people like that we would like to identify. So if anybody here has a strong interest in this and wants to participate on that, or if you could think about it and have people that you think should be included, if you could send me, not necessarily a name, but somebody from a certain, either board or commission, then I would appreciate it.
Given the length of tonight's discussion on medical marijuana, would it be more prudent to have those people come in perhaps after the town meeting?
The reason I wanted to present this tonight, and I should have included this. So a regional kickoff is being planned for May 24th, and that will be with all these communities, and it's going to be held at NECO in, Northern Essex in Lawrence. So that's fast approaching, and so I wanted to make sure this board, if you could hear about it on May 2nd and have any input and again, stakeholder type comments or developments you think were really good in town, or if you have any like recommendations for where you think housing might be lacking or choice. They'd like to hear anything like that, so.
Great.
Yeah, and I understand the timing part isn't ideal, but.
By the way, and very quickly on our favorite topic of the master plan, I did get a note back from Eric that they got a few more applications for the committee. He said 3 more. I did hear Brad Wakeman, either somebody hit him up or he was thinking of doing it, but he would be a perfect person for it, so.
Okay, I will let Eric know that if he didn't submit it.
Yeah.
So yes, it was renoticed, and I thought those 4 that came in, but.
Places we said we
Well, I've only seen it in half the places on the list, so.
Yeah. Yeah, minutes, April 4th minutes.
One correction. Minutes, one correction. P. Rosen should be M. Rosen. It's like in 4 or 5 different places.
What line was that?
It's Michael Rosen, he's listed as P. Rosen, so it's in numerous places.
Rosen.
So I'll make a motion to approve the April 4th, 2017 meeting minutes as amended.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Okay, motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay.